Hey, we're back. This is your average esports podcast, episode 28. We're almost getting there,
Damn.
up in the episode numbers, right? And this one's not going to be too long because there hasn't been too much happening between this episode and the last one. So we'll just go over a few things, and we're also mid the Kuala Lumpur major. I don't know.
Major, yeah.
I'm just gonna call
I
it the
think,
major,
yeah.
right? The KL major.
The KL major, yeah.
Yeah, so we're mid KL major. So, for start off though, I guess we'll start before we go into that. I guess we can talk a little bit about the esports awards. I didn't actually follow it too much. I basically just reacted to random tweets I saw. It's like, oh man, why do you have a streamer here? It's like, oh well, they actually pay for everything. Well, that's actually pretty legit then. I guess if that's the only way you can get the money, you may as well do it.
Unfortunately, it is how you get a lot of the money because obviously the streamers bring in most of the attention as well.
Yeah.
Like if you somehow manage to like include Ninja into the entire event, like that automatically adds like so much more traction these days anyway. Much like why, for example, there's another award show going on right now, or another vote for another award, the Game Awards, which is a little bit more legit because it's voted partly and by like journalists, like they actually put together nominees.
I think they're both actually voted by journalists, except the esports awards is also partial fan vote.
Yeah, no, I think Game Awards is definitely also part fan vote. I think, but either way, like I want to say that the Game Awards is a little bit more legit, but whatever. Anyway, they include Fortnite as esports title of the year, and that's only something you do because you want the publicity and you want like to bring even more attention to the award and to the entire show because it's Fortnite, right? Yeah. And similarly, you want to bring more attention to this, and you can attract more sponsors by like saying, "Hey, we include Ninja in our show, we include Shroud in our show, whatever, Doctor Disrespect or whatever last year." So yeah, it is how you get more money, and I can sort of understand it. But at the same time, and I know you saw my tweet, at the same time, if you do include that, if you come from the esports industry, then we, as the esports industry, can't go
complain about it, right?
Exactly. Do you remember that opinion piece that from Richard Lewis that he wrote about the Playboy or whatever when they
he wrote about Ninja basically.
Yeah, Ninja. There was an article about Ninja and like how he's like esports biggest face or whatever. There's something along those lines, but at the end of the day, Ninja has nothing to do with esports.
Yeah.
I mean, he has had an esports past, which was super non-successful.
8 years ago or something like ridiculous. It was a long time ago.
And you can't even count these like Fortnite tournaments as like actual esports because they're like show matches. Like you literally invite like celebrities to team up with streamers. Yeah. That has nothing to do with esports. Just because you have a competition doesn't mean that it's esports. Mm-hmm. And like he made a piece, and I totally agree with it, and I'm sure that he would object to the streamers being nominated or he probably did object to the streamers being nominated as well. But the thing is, we as an industry, we look kind of foolish if we, on one side of the industry, we call out the mainstream media for titling Ninja and the likes as esports people, as esports pros or gamers even, but we ourselves include them in our awards as well. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's just an overall bad look.
It just feels ridiculous, right? It feels farcical. That's probably
how I put it. It does. And at the end of the day, we're probably going to move away from some point because we will be able to legitimately put an esports award show together that is really and actually focused on esports. So it is kind of like a growing pain in that regard, but still, it's just something that I found really hilarious because, oh, esports, whatever of the year. Oh, we have Dr. Lupo, who is just a full-time streamer for whatever team.
Yeah, right. Like,
hooray!
Feels definitely weird. There was something else I was gonna say. Oh, this time there weren't that many controversial picks, at least for the games we follow. Right?
Yeah.
I think
they weren't that controversial. I think the most controversial thing was that didn't who won esports of the year? Overwatch, right?
Yeah, Overwatch.
You could argue that Overwatch League, while it was great, I mean I think Slasher pretty much pointed it out correctly. Like the fact that they are like downsizing, there's
it's
so
really
many
funny,
things that
isn't
they're
it?
changing. They're changing so many things. They're cutting contenders. They're like cutting they're cutting prize pools from contenders.
They're cutting talent. Apparently, they're cutting production.
Yeah,
Actually,
exactly.
we know they're cutting production. right? So
And then they're like calling it esports of the year. It's just really ridiculous when you look at other esports titles. Like I'm not even like calling for Dota as an esports title of the year. I find it weird to say esports title of the year because like it's always difficult to really compare them to one another because they're so different in models
like,
as well.
I don't know what criteria you're holding it by. That's why
Yeah.
I wouldn't vote for that one. Like you see, like every once in a while, I write a blog piece about like with the esports awards because like it's a free piece. It's like whatever. I'll just give my thoughts about it. But I almost
Yeah.
never give my thoughts about like streamers or like what is the actual best esports title of the year because like I don't have the criteria to measure that, and I don't even have the measuring tools to measure like any of those things, right? So it's like,
Oh.
how would you measure it? Because I definitely don't think like viewership is like the number one thing, but I also like by personal preference, I'd be like, yeah, I probably prefer Dota or CS:GO, but it's like I just like
even,
that
even if
more. It's like what do you
even
want?
if viewership was like a massive criteria, it's not like Overwatch was like so dominant in that department
Actually,
either.
Overwatch is pretty low in that department, so
Yeah,
like, that would
exactly.
make
Like,
sense, right?
don't like League and Dota eclipse it, especially in Asia.
Yeah, League and Dota definitely eclipse it in Asia for sure, and like that's if you're just going by off raw numbers, that's all you need.
Exactly.
So
I don't know. It just feels really weird, especially because it won last year. Like it won last year, which was already ridiculous. Last year there was no competitive season. Like there was Overwatch
yeah,
World Cup, and then there was like one tournament or
I
whatever.
will say this: if if it's like one of those weird things where like Blizzard pays them, like fair enough, whatever. Like it doesn't really bother me. I don't think it bothers anybody. That particular
The
award,
thing-
except the Epic Games guy. That guy got screwed, but everybody else was fine.
I think there's a couple of people like I think there's like obviously like fans like from other games that are like really triggered by it. They're like, oh, like, you know how people are like, you know, they're very hardcore about their own fandom.
Yeah,
I think esports people in general, like I'm not really bothered by it. I just find it hilarious, and it's obviously
me
because
too.
I, I can't really think of like a straight up reason for why it is the way it is. Like you said, unless it's like actually being paid for. How the hell did this come together? Is it maybe like just like Overwatch has the most active fans when it comes to like this voting thing? Who knows? Maybe they want to gain more legitimacy by awarding Overwatch or game like Overwatch this kind of title, so they can say, you know, when people refer to Overwatch, they refer to it as the game of the year, as voted by like the esports awards or whatever.
Maybe Blizzard just happens to like this more than the other devs. So like, maybe we'll be a bit
yeah.
more biased, like I don't, subconsciously or consciously or whatever. Like who knows? Nobody really
And
knows.
that's why I also thought Publisher of the Year was like,
Eh.
They also won that, which is like, you know, again, this is a team that's
Like,
downsizing in
here's
every department.
Here's the funny thing: they won a bunch of awards. I don't necessarily think they should have. Like, fair enough. I actually will give credit to the Overwatch League finals in the sense that they've sold out,
Yeah,
and that's pretty good. That's pretty good actually. Just for if you're just talking about like the event itself. But I'll go ahead and say I think the tournament of the year was definitely TI8. I
would agree.
I don't think anything comes close to it, except maybe the Boston Major. But I think I wrote about this too. Was like the difference between the two of them is TI8 had a losers bracket, so you got to see an extra chapter and an extra finale. So
yes, and that's one of the things that like I wouldn't even vote TI like every year. I actually don't think that TI last year was necessarily that great. Like I enjoyed Liquid's run, but it wasn't necessarily that great or like a
yeah, it wasn't
like
that
a
great.
super storyline, right? And even like in terms of like production, whatever. But this year it felt incredibly well done because they also had like these pieces in between that were really heavy in a lot of ways. Like they had the Shiver one, and then they had the like Japan and the Peru one where they like explored Dota communities. Right?
They did a really good job. I think I could definitely tell some of them were straight up hotbid ones too.
Yeah, and that's the thing. They did so much more around the event that I just don't think any of the other events really did.
Yeah.
In the esports space,
except for the unlimited eggs at Face It Major. I'll give the
well,
shout out.
they did, but
No,
the Face It Major was just
that's just a joke. That's a joke. Like the only thing I
right.
remember about them is the unlimited eggs.
all right. No, but they technically did do their like documentaries about the players, right? They like the little ones.
Yeah,
that
but like they did all the timing off. Like
I mean, who releases them between groups and playoffs? That's the dumbest thing I could ever think of.
Yeah.
That's like a surefire way of making sure, like that's making sure people don't watch it.
yeah,
Because if they are not like forced to watch it in some sort of way, like as interesting as they might, like people will still watch it who are like super interested in that stuff, but it has much more impact if it's like in the middle of the broadcast. Whatever. That's a totally different. We already rented it, or I already rented about that. I will say about this esports awards though, just to sort of like, we don't really want to spend too much time on it, but I do think that they had a cool couple of categories that I really liked. That esports photographer of the year, which I'm not sure they had the year before that.
They did, I think. 'Cause I remember,
they did. All right, but they also had esports videographer of the year. Did they also have that?
No,
I don't think they did.
I don't think they had videographer, but I know they had photographer.
No. Like those videographer.
Those are pretty legit, I think.
Those are pretty legit, and in terms of like who wins, who won, or whatever, it's really tough call. And at the end of the day, especially in terms of videographer, a lot of it is about taste. So I feel like it's very difficult to say who actually like deserves it or doesn't. In a way, I at least am happy that they even have the category to like recognize the fact that there's super talented people out there doing all of this.
Mm-hmm.
Same with obviously coverage website and journalists, which they've had for a couple, which they've had all 3 years now. I think it started 2016. I think you and I would probably agree that Jacob Wolf deserved the win. I know that. I mean, at least I think so. You could make a case for like other people, obviously.
Like here's the things. Like as far as I'm aware, like the people they nominated do different things.
So that's one of.
So when you say deserve, like it's not like they're competing even within the same area necessarily. You know what I mean?
No, that's true. That's true, and that's one of the things that bothers me for like esports. Like they did that last year or the year before that they had esports broadcaster of the year, and they like combined play-by-play commentator with like hosts and with like on like even like desk and on stage hosts. Like all of them have like completely different tasks, right? So you're 100% right. Like all of these have completely different areas. Like Decay obviously is
if I'm just going about pure numbers, Thorn would win every single time because he literally does like 2 or 3 times more than everybody else at least.
Yeah,
and that's like comparing him to like the next most productive person. Right, so that's like if you're just going by pure like numbers, then he'd probably win. But like obviously he doesn't do nearly as many investigative pieces, right? So
what's funny is the fact that Slasher got nominated. Like no offense against Slasher. I actually think as a journalist he has like a very legitimate past and history, even if some may not agree. But like he doesn't work for a publication anymore. Yeah. He legitimately just tweets about his investigative findings.
He himself thought he didn't deserve it, so. Whatever.
I mean, yeah, no, I know. That's what I'm saying. Like, a lot of these things are sometimes very iffy, but at least they do recognize. And I think I make this tweet as well. Like, as much as I may disagree with a lot of these things when it comes to categories, nominees, decisions about like how to present all of it in the first place and how to organize all of it, I do think it's good that they at least exist, because while it may not matter to like Dota or Valve whether or not they get nominated, I do think like a person like Jacob, like all of these videographers and photographers, I think it's an honor for them, and like they really feel like rewarded when they do actually get nominated and win. And it's kind of cool because they do deserve it. Like you could probably give an award to all of them because they've done all of them have done outstanding work in the
I think most people do, like not me obviously, but like other more notable people do like the recognition from the public. I just like the money. But I'm a simple man with simple needs. I just like the money and I like watching games, and it just happens to.
Hey, at least you're honest about it. There's a lot of people that don't care about the money. They're like, oh yeah, I'm in it for the passion. Oh wait, you want me to work for like minimum wage?
Listen, here's the difference. I've never said anything about passion, but I have technically worked for like 4 years for free, so nobody can ever take that away from me.
No, definitely. Same here. That's the thing, and that's why I think it's totally legitimate to now say, "Hey, we're in it for the money," and to a degree, right? Not obviously only for the money.
I'd still end up doing it, but I'd probably do it less.
Yeah, but that's
yeah. All right.
Anyway, I think this wraps up the.
One more thing. The whole point of that was basically, Blizzard won a bunch of things I don't think they should have won, but like the one player that they should have definitely won, Rookie of the Year, was Jonak. Because Jonak is actually in contention for Player of the Year, and he's a legitimate rookie. And no other esport actually had a rookie that was literally Player of the Year. So I should just point that out.
Which is funny because we did have that discussion last year with GH
and Hobbit.
Exactly, we're like almost in a way like too many rookies of the year. Like you could technically vote for, and you could. I think there was a legitimate case to be made for both. At the end of the day, I actually don't even care.
Like I think that one was. Actually close though. Like that one's like either way. This one was like I don't think anybody was actually close to Jonas.
Yeah.
So
no, but that's what I'm saying, right? Like they seem to, and these votes seem to just never really get it right in a lot of ways. which is, I guess, sort of understandable considering it's at the end of the day also like a popularity contest because you can publicly vote.
No, like even here's the thing is like the even if you didn't do the popularity contest, like I follow a lot of different, like I don't necessarily follow, but I do like listen to a lot of different people talk. I read a lot of different things, right? Like the amount of people who could legitimately create such a list across all different esports and make it like consistent with their criteria and their knowledge, it's, could be counted on like one hand maybe. And like even in my case, I watched like 8 or 9 of these things. I don't watch like the other like 8 that are missing. It's like, come on, it's gonna be real hard to do it. So that's just my thoughts about it. Okay, we can move on. Let's go to Dota 2. Let's talk about the. Let's talk about the pizza party first. So, Complexity Gaming had a pizza party recently.
No pizza was had, unfortunately. There was no pizza involved.
Complexity actually wasn't even willing to do the memes. That's how disastrous this roster shuffle was.
Dude, you know who did the memes, which we could actually talk about later as well? Mineski. They legitimately had pizza before Mushi left.
Okay, you got to send me that link because I was looking for that because here's like I'm gonna have an esports award with the top memes of the year, and that's definitely one of them.
So the manager legitimately tweeted out a picture of them eating pizza, and then like, I swear to God, like 2 hours later, they announced that Mushi has left the team. Like
that's so good.
That was so good.
I can't even be mad. Like, listen, the Mushi's a legendary player, but he got pizza partied.
He got pizza partied.
I can't believe Eternal Enemy didn't give you guys a pizza on the way out. That's some bullshit. Just that.
And this is where I guess we could like begin talking about this entire thing. Like, a lot of people didn't actually watch the entire video that like Beef recorded, and it's just like a 1.5 minute long video or whatever. Yeah. And he basically he does explain that both Snaking and Envy left on their own request. Like, they wanted to be released from the team. Contracts.
Yeah.
From the team. Like, a lot of people just assumed that we kicked all of them, and it is true that we benched Snaking. Skim, yeah, that we benched Skim. It feels weird saying his name, I'll be honest. Yeah. It is true that we benched him, you know, for the reasons explained. Like, just to reiterate, like, it is like there's one thing with visa being an issue, the fact that we've, you know, still struggled to get an actual visa.
You guys technically never practiced as a 5-man lineup
up until the LAN event, right? And then there was obviously the controversy in Dream League, and it is going forward. It is a concern for us that, you know, the player might not represent us properly in the long run. While any organization really tries to do their best in making sure that the players represent their organization properly, like, it is kind of worrisome that he just randomly just messaged that out, like in all chat. Like, it's just really weird. But I think at the end, like,
he is young. He is young. So, like,
he's young, and he would, and I think.
Here's the thing: it'd be different if this guy was like American.
Yes,
because like like in America, that's like a thing that's like hit into you when you're very young. I don't necessarily know if that's the same for SEA. So
yes.
So I will point that out. It's like it's different. It's different circumstances.
And I think it would have been also really different if we had lived, like, if he had been in here, like, not here, but in America, like, from the beginning.
And learned this stuff.
Yeah, there would have been a lot of things he would have been able to learn and pick up along the way, and like, we would have had a better feel of him as well, like what kind of person he is, to make sure that we know, like, kind of like what guidance he needs. But I think right now we're just in a really difficult situation overall, because if you look at just the overall situation in the scene, there's not a lot of players left. And while it is like a huge blow to like not have Skim, the reality is that a lot of
you could have survived without Skim. Like, the problem is, like, you lost Skim, and then Snaking and Eternal Envy both left. So
yes, it's just a really shitty situation to basically start from scratch, because now we're like left with Z freaking Limb, which was exactly the same situation that we were in like pre-TI or like after TI, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. We're looking for new players. I know that we've reached out to a couple already. We're not going to be able to play the major qualifier, as far as I know, which is already going on, by the way. Yeah. Stupid, which I might add, because they are starting the major qualifier during the major. So that means if a player gets like kicked from a major participating team, he cannot even look to participate in the next major. He literally just has to start with the minor run.
Yeah, that's pretty dumb.
The other dumb thing is that the major open qualifier starts on the old patch, and then continues in the regional qualifier with the new patch.
Yeah, that's really dumb.
It is it is super dumb. Like, this is classic. Valve didn't think this through. Like, they legitimately scheduled it probably like after the major, and like the regional qualifier after the major. Like, yeah, this is fine. Oh wait, we have open qualifiers. Huh. I guess people will have to play it during the major. Again, really an oversight. Definitely, somebody missed that for sure. Really bad for a lot of people. And we definitely won't be able to play open qualifier. I'm not even sure if we can get invited to the closed qualifier. I don't even know how that works this season.
No, probably not.
I don't think so. Either way, even if we have to play like minor qualifier, I think that's fine, because right now the team, like, we need to find a team first before we can actually like think about playing, right?
You actually need 5 people in the server. You can't just can't it can't just be like G2 was like, technically Smiths is a player.
I mean, hey, Josh has improved his gameplay a lot ever since he joined the team. Like, he joined and it was like 2.5k MMR or whatever, and then he's like, he's almost Josh 5k now.
And Swindles, and let's go.
But yeah, it's really rough, the situation out there. But I do think that it's gonna improve. Like, if we had more time, I think we'd probably be able to like find a really like actually good team. Not that we don't find a good team now, but I think
the time constraints
really difficult. The time constraints are really, really bad. Because you have to assume that one of the major teams is going to make changes, or a couple of them potentially. The minor teams certainly have already started making changes. Like, we made a change. Who else made a change?
Aster, the Chinese team. Aster's going to make a change again.
Aster is going to make a change again. Like, there's going to be teams making changes. You may or may not already know about them, and then it's going to be like, you know, who are going to pick up. And especially also like the open qualifier now that's going on right now. Like, Eternal Envy's team already lost the first open qualifier. I think they could play the second one in a couple of days. Like, if that fails and maybe they disband, maybe we like pick up one of their players, so like one of the other players. Like, you can't really tell right now who's going to end up on our team. And I'm pretty sure Josh doesn't even know. So that's just one of those things there. We'll just have to figure out. Yeah. But that's why I think after the major, there's going to be like a smaller shuffle period, because we already talked about it in the pre-show, or like before the show started. This is the first major, and this means that there's going to be less point penalty. Like, the penalty is going to be very small for a lot of teams, especially like the lower scoring teams, obviously. So it is almost advisable to, if you do consider changes, do them now. So
I think it's going to be like this throughout most of the year too. Actually, if you're like a lower tier team, like we're talking about like 10 and below, I think it's always better just do the roster shuffle, unless you actually believe your team can continue to build. But I don't think most of the players think like that.
And even if that doesn't happen, like, OG last year showed that it honestly doesn't matter what you do all year long. Yeah. As long as you just win open qualifier, win the regional qualifier, and like, obviously it sounds easier than it actually is, right? But you can still reasonably make it to TI and expect a reasonable finish at TI just by going through open qualifiers. So worst case, you can just, even after like the last major, just shuffle all you want and then you just go in. Yeah. But yeah, I do think that a lot of the lower tier teams will probably just take that hit in terms of like point reduction, because it's whatever. If I think Josh made the math, or did the math on our press conference, the second to last one, he said it is very reasonable to expect that a couple of teams will like place 1 to 4th in like multiple majors, like the last season, or like pretty much any season.
It's very reasonable to assume that.
And that means that just 1 6th place, or one even maybe 4th place or whatever, like, you know, one good major performance can get you an invite to TI.
Yeah, this season is very, very different from last season, even though I think the placings will be similar. Because like if we swapped the circuits, I'll go ahead and say I think this season's teams with last season's circuit, the results would have been very different. Because last season we knew the top 3 for sure. This season, like, there's actually like 6-ish teams that could swap around depending on the form or whatever.
For now, anyway, I think it's going to be default. It's going to be a little bit more clear cut going down the line, because right now it's just really difficult to tell, because we don't really know how Liquid and OG are going to fare in all of this. But I think down the line you're going to have a little bit more certainty, because a lot of teams won't keep the form. Like Secret, for example, last year they started out great as well.
Yeah, I think Secret's going to fall off.
right?
Actually,
Likely you have to assume so because it's super unreasonable for a team to actually keep their form. I think the only teams that have continuously kept their form throughout from event to event are actually VP and Liquid in like the last season. Even before that, we've had teams always fall off. Like Wings, for example, they bombed out middle of the major because they. Like,
I mean,
it's
Wings only
to...
had like 2 spikes. To be fair.
Well, yeah, true, but
just
even
happened
like
to be
OG,
the craziest spikes of all time.
OG when they won their major, between those majors, they didn't actually win that much. I don't think actually they won any title.
No, they were good, but they weren't like dominant.
Exactly, and it's really difficult to keep that kind of form. So it is like, very reasonable to expect that.
LGD's doing it, but like, how long can you do that? Because they've been doing it all year.
That's true, but yeah. Like how long? Well, we technically still have to do how far they can take this, right?
Yeah.
For all we know, they're gonna lose to Secret today or tomorrow, or however you want to look at it.
Yeah.
And then they're gonna lose in the low bracket, which is again super unlikely. Actually, is it super unlikely?
We'll see. We may as well go. Let's go see this. All
right, let's go look at this. Let's go to the major. We have Secret versus LGD. I think it's actually even the first matchup.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
It is the first matchup.
It's in like a few hours.
Yeah, 2.5 hours. I actually think it's very reasonable to expect that Secret wins. I think generally Secret has always done well against Chinese teams because Puppy, as a captain, likes to play a way that is very favorable against Chinese teams. Mm-hmm. He understands their tempo. He understands sort of like their decision making in the mid game, and that's usually where Chinese teams shine because they make superior decision making in the mid game. We're disciplined when it comes to waiting for certain item timings or waiting to force certain fights. And I feel like Puppy knows how they want to take those fights and usually just outthinks them in that regard, or out strategizes them. And I think Secret finally has a team that, or not finally, but they right now have a team that is just really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
Because Nisha, I think a lot of people have already pointed out, I myself have also pointed out because I called it, but Nisha as a carry is just really, really strong. It's just very consistent. It's really difficult to sort of like not get a good performance out of him. And then Zai Yapser is just a winning combo into his playmaking. So
yeah,
I don't know.
I'm still favoring LGD, but I can see a world where Secret wins.
I will say though that in both cases, I don't think we've actually yet seen either of these teams tested at this event. If you look at their opponents thus far, like LGD faced Tigers. Tigers win in last place. It's like Tigers, they won the minor and they kind of look promising going into it, but they just didn't look good at this event.
They did not look good, no.
And then Fnatic, which
Fnatic didn't look good either.
I honestly thought Fnatic should have lost against J-Storm. I think J-Storm should have won, but they just tilted and they just couldn't. Like, they honestly should have won that last game. I'm not sure if you watched that, but that last game J-Storm should have won, but they just completely threw the game. On multiple occasions, by the way. They should have won like 2 or 3 times that game, but they kind of just didn't. So Fnatic should have lost there. They did lose to EG. Very clean wins by EG, by the way. And then... Alliance, who in the playoffs also kind of shit the bed,
basically did.
against LGD, which is understandable because it's their first line of it and it's the first time they actually play like a super opponent in terms of LGD.
I think Alliance might be screwed this year.
They might be going forward
because like PPD already pointed this out. Like the way the qualifiers work, if you go into Europe, who do you got? Secret, NIP, OG, Liquid. Congratulations, Alliance. You got fucked.
That's a sad part, right? I think they're actually internationally speaking, or like in terms of like global ranking, if you made like a global ranking, they probably are a top 16 team right now.
Yeah.
But like all the powerhouses in Europe get fucked. Like if you look at their group stage games, they played Paynex and Forward,
and I think they're better than both, right? So it's like
they beat both, and I think in like 10 games or 10 matches, Forward probably.
I don't mean like better than both, but like beat both, yeah.
Yeah, they beat both, yeah, and I think that's not an easy task. I honestly think a lot of teams would have tripped then. Like if you play both teams in one day, I think a lot of teams would have tripped. Alliance didn't, and I think it is worth noting. But then against Alliance, against LGD, you could see that they just don't have that experience playing these teams.
Yep. Yes, and like what I mean by like they're screwed is not only like do they have to get out of those qualifiers, but like even if they like somehow got out of them, like they don't have the experience to do well. So I think like among all of the teams here, this is like specifically a team I'd literally want to send to every fucking third party LAN, as many of them as I could.
Yes, 100%. They really need this experience. You could also tell against TNC that they just didn't have any experience playing like either Chinese or a CA team. Like you could just tell that they just didn't know like how to adjust their own tempo and how to adjust to the opponent. Like if you put Secret against like a Chinese team, against like an NA team, against any team really, you can see that they can change their way of playing because they know how to adapt to the or like any top team really. Just pick Secret because they're like whatever. But Alliance, you could just tell that they're like, you know, against LGD, what do we do? Oh, let's just try. No, they already beat us.
Yep.
Like those were just dominant wins from LGD. I actually missed. I had to rewatch it because I missed it because they were so quick. Like I just didn't expect this.
Like snap, you're done. Like okay, whatever. What happened? Yeah.
So yeah, I picked Secret over LGD, but I totally could see LGD beating them. It's like a toss up really, but I think it's like 60-40 Secret for me.
Yeah, I'll take LGD side just because like I have no reason not to. I have no reason not to right now. Like it's not like they've looked particularly bad. So we'll see. NIP versus Virtus Pro. I think we're both going Virtus Pro here.
You know.
You believe in Fada? You believe no?
No, I believe in Mind Control.
Mind Control is pretty sick. I'll give you that. Mind Control is pretty sick.
They have the best stand-in in this, like you could possibly ask for.
They basically have the best like offlaner here.
He's the best offlaner in the world, probably. I think after TI there were a couple of questions whether or not like he was still one of the best because I thought his TI performance wasn't necessarily that great.
I actually feel like Liquid, like this is like off tangent, but like I was listening to a podcast with like some UK like former heavyweight boxing champion or whatever. I forget his name now. So it was something ridiculous, but basically he said like whenever he practiced for an actual match, he always made sure that he never over practiced because he could burn yourself out.
Yeah.
And like you would and like that burnout is actually worse than like going a bit underprepared. And I actually think that's what happened to Liquid at TI8.
Yeah. They
should have burned out by the end. Like they weren't there.
They kept the tempo too high last season. Like they started out from the very first tournament almost. I think they skipped. No, they did actually attend the first one. I think.
Yeah, no, they only had like a 2-week break at some point.
Yeah, and that's just stupid. And I think they looked at it pretty much the way OG looked at it last season already. Like OG took an extended break last season already. And
yeah.
Whether or not it worked, you can't really tell because technically
the team wasn't good.
It was a bad team and it was a completely different team that won TI, so you can't really tell if it was because of that break. But ultimately, especially this season, because now you kind of know if you win one major, it is super likely you will get to TI. It is super likely. So for Liquid and OG, I think it's very reasonable to just take a break and just not be burned. Like OG, for example, I think the way they played is really exhausting. Actually, because you kind of put yourself onto the edge every game because you put yourself on the risk of losing because you play a lineup that's behind.
It's super fun to watch, but yes, it's very tiring.
Super fun to watch, but it's incredibly exhausting mentally to play that because at some point you just can't make any mistakes anymore.
I'm sure Anna's used to it. Like this is like literally his entire career if you think about it.
I actually do have to say the way Anna played it almost felt like he likes it. Like like he almost feels like
no. I think he's literally born into this. If you think about it, like
probably
like his entire SEA experience was actually doing this right as a pub player. That's like as far as I know, that's literally how he played as a pub player. It was like he could lose lane, but he'd win the late game.
Yeah.
Goes to OG, it's the exact same thing. Gets kicked out, like does basically the same thing, like or basically like sits out, like comes back, does the same thing. Like this is literally who he is as a person, and this is like who OG literally is as players.
Pretty much.
So it's like it's a perfect fit.
I think Liquid for now have like sort of like found this for themselves as well to realize, all right, we just need to take a break. Mind Control. Honestly, this event, he might just be one of the best players at this event right now. Like
he's his performance, he's great. I love it.
His performance for NIP was insane. Like it was really, really good. So I actually think like if PPD ever wants to have a chance to beat Virtus Pro, which he like struggled with last season, like they just continuously beat him.
Like listen, man, I don't know if it's PPD because like that team had some flaws in it.
That team did have flaws in it.
Me by flaws, I just mean CCNC, of course.
Who I have to say, he's actually shaped up. I think, even over the last season, as much as shit as I give him, I do think he's continuously
he's solid.
Improved.
He's solid. He's just not. He's not going to be tier 1.
No, I probably agree with that. Yeah. But yeah, I'm not saying it is PPD, but you know, PPD does have this sort of like grudge match going on with Virtus Pro in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
and
He also
I
has one with
think
the
that
EG, but he bodied Bulba in
yeah,
that draft.
he bodied him,
And he just straight up
I
said
think,
it too. It's like, oh man, it's cold blooded.
which is funny though because I'm not sure that that was actually his call, like the Queen of Pain or whatever.
No, like I remember,
think that's
who was on the panel at the time? Grant, I think. He's basically like,
Grand, maybe. Yeah.
he basically is like, I bet you $100. Fucking Sumail that picked Queen of Pain. I was like,
Yeah.
that does sound pretty reasonable if you think about who Sumail is.
But yeah, no, actually I'm probably gonna go with NIP. I think if they ever want to beat Virtus Pro this season,
It's
this
with
might be
mind
their.
control.
It's probably with mind control. It's not that 3-3 is a bad offlaner. It's just mind control's a better one.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he is. At least currently, like we'll see if that ever switches because I think 3-3 is pretty close, but and I think 3-3 was a better player last year.
He probably was a better player last season, but again,
But he didn't reach
one
the
of,
peaks of mind control.
one of my gripes with 3-3 will be, unless he changes it, the fact that he just has a very limited hero pool.
He's pretty specialized.
Like,
yeah. So and then mind control has like a lot more variety to him. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
I'm still gonna go with Virtus Pro. I think I just think it's a more complete team. Like, what do you want? Like, listen, it's not like as good as PPD is, it's not like he's gonna fucking body Solo in the draft. Solo could literally misclick a pick draw and still win. Wait, that actually did happen.
Solo. It's not. It's not always solo drafting though. I think it's now gone to Ramsey.
I think it's actually Ramses, but it's like, but you know what I mean? It's like
coach.
Basically this team's like so good, like they can fuck around and still win. So
pretty much.
Yeah, unless it's actually like a high pressure TI match, then probably not. Listen, man, PPD also called that one like they fucking melt in the summer.
You know, this is technically one of the bigger majors again. Like I made this point after TI, I think in our post TI show, that Virtus Pro even in the last season choked out of any like the big tournaments that resemble TI in terms of like format, prestige, and whatnot. So this is one of those big ones, and this could be the timing for them to choke, and that's I guess an additional point as to why I think NIP have it.
I mean, it's possible, but it doesn't feel like it yet.
It doesn't feel like it yet, but at the same time, it is also because the format the way it is, and I think this is reasonable for a lot of teams to complain about it. You can make upper bracket after winning 2 games.
Yeah, so
like you can even dodge certain opponents, right? And then if you like just get like a really good opponent, when Fnatic was a really good opponent for VP, like suddenly you're top 6.
Yeah,
you have to win 3 matches in your top 6. That's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, it's not bad. Not bad way to start the year for those top 6 teams.
Yeah.
Let's see. Vici Gaming, let's talk about them. Paparazzi and Ori, you failed me once again. Why the fuck do I keep falling into this goddamn trap? Just because you guys get second a shit ton of times in tournaments that don't matter. God damn it.
See, one of the big things, which I guess I never really talked about, but one of the things that also really trigger me about this team is the fact that they tend to just go back to like their comfort picks as opposed to like picking what's actually right for the game. Like, you know that last game what they played against Vici against TNC. They're like, how about I pick a DP.
I didn't even know DP existed.
A hero that doesn't exist in the meta right now for very good reasons against heroes that are pretty good against it. I will say that it is somewhat of a perceived counter to say Elder Titan, for example, against a couple of them actually. I guess because Silence, you know, the ultimate is pretty strong. It's really tanky, so it's an unfavorable target to burst or like to initiate on. But generally speaking, it's not a great hero. It's super slow. Doesn't necessarily push towers that well anymore because like you don't really have that map control anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And just again, it's just very slow. And as a mid laner, you need somebody that can just provide tempo to the game. What do? You pick DP anyway because you think, well, it is one of Ori's favorite heroes.
God damn it.
And what happened? Shit. They lost.
Yeah, like I hope Vici actually changes their roster, and I don't even know who they would change.
Those two, again, I keep saying it, but it is the Ortiz-Sumail conundrum. They either need to disband and be on separate rosters so they can both be their own star players, or they somehow find that magical solution that is PPD and makes them work both of them.
PPD
Actually,
couldn't make it work.
PPD could have made it.
But PPD had other problems though. It was more of like a personal clash than a...
Exactly. He had like problems with him and those two, as opposed to like those two like they're like I don't think PPD ever had the chance of actually working on that roster full like actually, right?
Yeah, like basically Civil War already broke out. So
but all right, but even then, like it's still pretty difficult. We can't even tell if EG has figured it out themselves yet. Like that's the thing, right? Like EG, can you really say they worked out that issue just because they're now making consistently top 4? Well, con fucking grats, you made that before already, you know?
Yeah, like it's not really working out for them yet, but it hasn't necessarily not worked out. Like we're still in the testing phase for EG, but yeah, I feel like you're probably good between the two. I'd rather pick Paparazzi. I'll say that.
I think so too. Paparazzi, in my opinion, is the more versatile player. Even in Vici, no, not Vici Gaming, Invictus Gaming, yeah, IGV, I thought he was the standout player for sure. He was always the carry. He could switch to mid position. He had like a really diverse hero pool, and it allowed them to be very flexible with drafting. For example, when they picked Invoker or a Stone Spirit, they're like, well, is it going to be on that hero or that player, or like on that player or that player? And they could change out the play styles, dynamics, and stuff like that. Yeah. I think that's like Paparazzi in IGV was actually a really, really good player. In Vici Gaming, he's like, I mean, yeah, he's good. But he's sometimes still the best player on that team. But the thing is, when he isn't, it's like, oh, I guess I get to watch the Ori show. If that even happens. That's the thing.
Here's the difference. He probably was a better player in IGV, but he's also more of a choker in IGV. Whereas like now he's less of a choker, but like his time is split between him and Ori. So it's like, yeah, you win some, you lose some, I guess. But basically, what I'm saying is they probably need a new mid laner and then maybe a new offlaner. But the problem with the offlaner problem is that there's no good offlaners in China. So,
or in Asia in general. Like Asia is struggling. That's
like unless you can trick Ice into coming back, it's not gonna work out for you.
But even Ice, and this is gonna be a really weird tangent, but even Ice is
he's falling off.
He's not the offlaner that he used to be, and I think he actually chokes in like really crucial matchups, like on big stages.
Yeah, he does. But here's the thing, he will always get there. He will always get you there,
and you have to respect that. Actually, I think you really do.
I have a lot of respect. I have a lot of respect for him, even though like you said, there are like clutch issues with him. But he always gets you there, so gotta respect it.
I mean, he just figured out like how to beat all of SEA, and it feels like that's just enough for him in a lot of ways. Like, I just don't see any.
He has no drive in progression. He has no drive in him anymore. Right?
I honestly don't think he has.
Basically here's the difference between like Ice and Eternal Envy. Ice is still probably a good to great player. Eternal Envy, I don't necessarily know if he's a good to great player, but he still has the fucking drive of one. Like, he still wants to win, doesn't he?
That's true.
Like, I think that's like the difference between the two. So, like, yeah, it's like it's tough. Like, you can really, it's hard to get both in like long time veterans, and I feel like Ice has played as long as anybody at this point. So, yeah, basically that also covers Fnatic because Fnatic was not good.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I only want to talk about Ice. Rest in peace, Fnatic. I don't know. That team probably. Actually, I don't know if they want to change or not, but it feels like this isn't the right chemistry.
When I met Mineski in Hamburg, I know someone, like I know the manager and I know like COO or whatever. So I joked a little bit with them, and I like in earshot of them, I talked to somebody else and I was like, what, Mineski? You mean like the biggest waste of potential since, I don't know, I don't even know what joke I made there, but I basically called him a waste of potential because I thought that all of their plays were wasted there. But honestly, a Fnatic is probably even worse than that. Yeah. You look at DJ, you look at Abed, like those two alone, obviously, right? But then even MP, I think, as oftentimes criticized for a lot of things, and I think very correctly, but you can't forget that he was, in secret when they made top 6 like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Or was it last year? No, 2 years ago.
2 years ago. It was a long time ago.
Yeah, and he is still a very consistent carrier, I think. He does make mistakes, and it is so very right to criticize him for that.
I mean, he's still part caveman, yeah.
Basically.
It's hard to tame the caveman, as we've seen with all the Korean players.
And to me, it's just like on paper, this lineup should be really sick. And again, they probably could dominate SEA for like this entire season if they wanted to.
Not a fan
More
of
than
it.
that, more than that, I just don't see it. Like I legitimately, I don't want to hate on him, but I feel like Jabs is if he is the in-game leader again, like he was for Faceless and he was for
You know,
whatever Mineski was it afterwards. Yeah, Mineski. Like if he is the in-game leader again, he is incredibly underwhelming. Like they
yeah.
just every time I watch any of his teams, they just don't seem to have like an actually good game plan, except for let's try to win one or two lanes and we'll see from there.
Like, the weird thing about SEA is I feel like they were never as good as when they still had KYXY and Ohio in rotation. Like, as in, like, those guys are still part of, like, the top teams. They were never as good as back then. Like, consistency. Like,
Yeah,
after that, basically, the Koreans carried them. And then
pretty much.
after that, they had, like, crazy upsets, but they were never consistently that great. And then the other problem with the SEA scene is they still don't have, like, an all-time great leader. Like, CIS finally got one with Solo. And that's what basically saved Virtus Pro.
Pretty much.
Puppy, Kuroki still run the game. Like he's
And
like he's still like No Tail and Fly split up, but that's pretty fucking great for the scene. Like PPD still up there. Like, but in China you still have like I guess LGD technically doesn't count, but like yeah, basically like the regions that are suffering the most just don't have the great leaders.
it doesn't help, obviously, that some of their great leaders left the scene. Like X Nova is in China now. Same with Afu.
Is Afu a
Um,
leader? I always assumed he was just a superstar.
no, he's a leader. He does shot call a lot. I interviewed him about it, and he also like helps with draft and stuff.
Okay.
So it's one of those things where it just doesn't really help that they're like shot callers or part of the like major shot callers left the scene. And you can really tell that the scene needs leaders because like they import them. Like they had Demon for TNC.
Yeah,
They have
1437.
1437 now for Tigers. And they had Envy for the longest time for Fnatic as well, which I guess necessarily didn't work out. But still, like you can tell that they really need those leaders, and I do think that Fnatic and Mineski now, both of them they desperately need like just a captain to just guide them through it. But it's really difficult because I think for Western people, it's much more of a culture shock to go to SEA than it is the vice versa,
Yeah.
because like Asian culture is so different from Western culture, whereas a lot of Western countries adopted Western culture or started to adopt a lot of Western culture in like big cities. Singapore, for example, isn't necessarily that big of a culture shock for a lot of Western people because the big cities there are actually just
They're
very
westernized a
similar.
bit, yeah.
They're very Westernized. Plus, like this might be just my opinion, but I actually think it's almost I'd say it's a fact that Western countries are generally more developed. It is a fact that they're more
Yeah, it
developed,
is
and
more.
that it's easier to live there than vice versa because living standards are just much more higher. Whereas if you're in SEA, you're kind of used to like a toilet in the ground or whatever. But for a lot of like Western people, that's just
Not the
like it makes you
case.
super uncomfortable and it's super difficult to adjust to that. So I think, and obviously language,
Language is a
because
huge factor, yeah.
exactly. So for me, or in my opinion, that just makes it really difficult for them to actually get like good captains consistently. Like if you're like let's say you were like a good captain in America or like in
Like here's
Europe, right?
the problem basically. Like if you want to be the best team, you don't just need a good captain. You need an all-time great captain.
Yeah, when those just don't come like randomly.
Like even for all the praise I give Eternal Envy, I don't necessarily consider him an all-time great captain. He's only great in the sense like you can do way more with way less than you would expect. Like
Yeah.
in that sense, he's great. But like in every other sense, he hasn't proven to me he's like one of the all-time greats, right?
No, but I think even like just getting like a good leader in general would already elevate a lot of these teams. Like I say, elevate. TNC has made top 6. They are a good team right now. They probably will continue being like a top 10, top 12 team going forward. But like for the Fnatic, for the Mineskis, for the whatever teams you have, they need just a good leader in the first place, right? It just seems like where Tigers, well, actually Tigers is like in a good place. I think they just got really unlucky, and I guess they need more time. But generally speaking, I just think
in
they
your
could.
dream like fucking like imploded or something. I didn't actually watch the
Yeah.
match, but apparently that's what everybody's saying.
They did just not show up. Like I'm not entirely sure what the reason behind it was. Some people are making excuses for like jet lag or whatever, and it is a real reason, right? But still, at the end of the day, they just didn't show up. No, but what I'm getting to is that just sometimes leaders aren't people that you like need to like get like those aren't like diamonds that you can get like you can buy in a shop that are like cut already. You need to find like that raw diamond in the rough that you can shape. I think that's the real approach because Misery, he wasn't born a leader. Maybe he was born a leader. He just never realized.
No,
it
he was
until
forced.
He was, like,
He was forced to become the leader in Dota.
exactly. He was forced to. He was forced to become a leader, and now I would say he's probably one of the best leaders you can get in the West, or just generally speaking,
Like,
right?
I think he has like certain problems, but like you can say the same thing for a bunch of these leaders, except like
Exactly.
Kuroki, I guess. Like beyond that, like every other leader has like a weird problem to them.
Well, you could technically argue that Kuroki maybe has had his own issues, like with Secret.
His issue is that he likes his teams too much.
Probably. But generally speaking, I feel like the SEA teams aren't taking big enough risks when it comes to like forming their rosters. Like, where are the Western players, for example? Why aren't they importing Western players? Like the big teams anyway. Like Fnatic, the biggest risk that they took was taking in Eternal Envy because they wanted to restructure. But that's not that big of a risk because he's like an established player, right? How much of a risk is that really? Whereas if you look at Europe, they're consistently taking big risks in terms of like hiring certain players.
But like I said, the difference is because they have all-time great leaders running that game there. Like Fly,
True.
You had Fly, Seb, No Tail, Kuroki, Puppey. S4. Like, what the fuck is going on with this fucking region? Like, how many leaders do you fucking need? Like, this is some bullshit. And like, two of them also went to NA. And you still have like way too many. Right? Like that. Like that's the difference. Like, I've seen so many like good players come through the years in Dota 2, but the only ones that stick around, except for Hao, the only ones that stick around have to like tie themselves to a great in-game leader. Hao's like literally the only one I've seen not do that and still be great. And of course, he went to PUBG.
Did he actually?
I don't know.
No, he did. He played this. He played this some sort of like promotional PUBG Mobile event or something.
Yeah, basically the dude is out, even though he's like, he's prophetic. Like remember the fucking right before, I think it was like right before last year. I think right before last year's circuit, he basically said EG's not gonna work. EG's not gonna work because like RTZ will somehow break this team. Completely right. Like,
I mean,
what the fuck? How does he know?
He is an incredibly smart player. Like, you could tell that he is a very smart player just by the way he played. And I kind of wish he's actually stuck around because God knows China could use a carrier like him right now. Or some Chinese teams anyway.
Yeah, he'd be fucking amazing, man. I'm still super tilted.
I mean, there's
I'm still
a lot
super
of
tilted that Ferrari like Hao thing didn't work out. It's like, what the fuck? God damn
there's
it.
a lot of retired players that could desperately, or that teams could desperately need. Like every year, when I trash on any random Chinese team that just sucks, I just look at YYF and I'm like, man, if only he returned. Then any team that could pick him up would actually just be the best Chinese team in the world, because they would just have the best offlaner in China. And that alone would already make you contender for like best Chinese team and the almost best team in the world. Like it's not even that the Chinese offlaners right now are like that bad. It's just that they're not that great.
Yeah.
Like, you can make cases for Chalice to be a good offlaner, but I think if you look at the team, he's arguably still a weak link.
He's a weak link, but it's like that's also because that's how they play him.
Right, that is partly because of how they play him, and also because you're like stacking up in like a team with FY and maybe who are like superstars, right?
Yeah.
But still, it is whatever. Chinese offlaners, man.
Chinese offlaners, some of the old Chinese leaders was like, but like they all have issues. They all love playing with their old mates. Like, that's their issue. So, whatever, man. Like, listen, until I will say this for the. I think the fucking Western leaders all got it right. They're like, fuck this regional shit. We're always going to build international superstar teams and keep bringing in the rookies. Like, they're fucking smart.
That's what it needs to be. But a lot of these teams from other regions are just really scared of it. And some teams just feasibly can't do it. Like, if you're a Chinese team, you can't just suddenly import like American players.
China's way too fucking hard to do that. Cause
it is really.
They can't even get their own players.
They don't even speak English, you know? So they just need to keep importing SEA players as much as possible, which already works. Again, I want to point to my blog where I pointed out that if you look at LGD and then last year Newbie, guess what? They had players from outside their own region that
Yep.
come into the
And
team,
they also have,
elevate them to another level.
they also have like combinations of like experienced veterans and new talent too. It's like
Exactly.
that's
And
very
it's like
it's a very strong combination.
it's like the healthy mix, and that's why you can look at certain teams and predict that they will be likely or more likely to be successful because they do have that perfect mix. But we shall see.
But like in like the case of like Alliance, TNC, actually not they're not the same. But like Alliance is like, yeah, you're all too young.
I think if you look at the way they played against both TNC and LGD, 100% because they don't have any experience playing those teams. You could argue Quackwa, but Quackwa isn't the type to like be like that experienced leader that makes sure that they avoid these kind of traps,
Like, listen,
especially in game.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like in the draft, you could argue they have Loda, right? Loda,
Yeah.
but draft is like at that stage, it's like 10% of the game because
Like
if you're up against an opponent like LGD and you are definitely the underdog in terms of raw skill, like draft is only 10%. If you get your draft right, it only means you're like not even halfway there.
Like here, did you see the fucking video from Heen? It was like a perfect. It's like a perfect.
I haven't yet. I meant to watch it.
Yeah, basically, it's the exact same quote I got out of him in my interview. It's just basically like, draft is literally just this fucking shadow image of your own understanding of the game. But what happens when the 5 players that are supposed to be drafting give all the responsibility to their coach? It's not like fucking Loda. Like Loda can get into the perfect draft in the world, but he can't explain the fucking understanding of what made that draft perfect. And if they don't have the fundamental understanding of what makes that draft perfect, they can't play it out.
Yeah. And that's why more often than not you need like 5 players that are actually intelligent about the game.
Yeah.
And like need to be on the same page when it comes to that as well. Like that's why a lot of teams when they form, they don't even look towards like mechanical skill necessarily, but they just talk to one. Like if you're at TI and you like form a new team with a guy that just got eliminated as well, right? You don't like look, is he actually mechanically the better player? No, you look at, hey, how do you want to play the game? Like, what do you think about Dota? Like, that's how literally teams form at TI because they gossip about Dota and they're like, I think right now they should have pushed this and they should have done that. And they're like, I agree with that. And then, hey, maybe we look at Dota the same way. And that's, pretty much what you and what Heen said.
Here's my theoretical question then. How does anybody team up with Eternal Envy? Because nobody thinks of Dota like Eternal Envy. I swear to God, I've never seen anybody think of Dota like him.
I do think that when it comes to like certain things, he has like very similar views as a lot of other people. Like I got to hang out with him a little bit and with the rest of the team, right? And he does have certain ideas of the game, like how certain things need to be done that I think are just general understandings of like that other people would generally agree with. So in that regard, I probably think that that they just find like a certain common ground and then they go from there and just accept.
Like they understand like 9% of it, but then like only the 10% comes out the very end. Like what the fuck?
And even like oftentimes I think people do understand what Eternal Envy wants from the game. They might not necessarily agree with it, but I think if you form a team with him, you're just gonna have to accept that he wants a game to be played a certain way, and it's just whether or not you trust him and his abilities enough to like follow through with it, right? So in that regard, I think that it is probably rather like a lot of times people are just like, well, Eternal Enemy, I just trust you and let's just go along with it. And he does learn, like he does learn from his mistakes as well.
That's his like fucking power. It's like he learns, but the other half of that power is like I have to keep learning. And if you keep trying to learn, you're going to make a bunch of mistakes too. And that's like his superpower and his super weakness. It's like he will always push the fucking edge, and he'll always get punished for it, but he'll always learn something from it.
Pretty much, yeah. No, but just to come back to that Heen quote, I totally agree with that. Like players need to 100% understand what the whole draft was all about, and that's why I think Alliance, like even if they like understand what they need to do with their draft, like at the end of the day, it is still a lot about also what LGD, like the opponent, wants to do with their draft, right? And I think for a team like Alliance that has 5 youngsters, especially, or like 4 youngsters and a guy that just like likes to farm, no offense, Quaker, but I don't think that he's necessarily the kind of guy. Again, he's not really a leader that just takes over the game and be like, all right, they're clearly want to do this and then they're going to do this. Like, even if he may have already played, he actually has played against LGD before. Not necessarily this team, but he has a history.
He's played a bunch of people before. He's pretty experienced.
He's pretty much a veteran, but even if he has experienced it before, he's not the kind of guy to like, all right, totally see the pattern of like what's happening. How do we need to react? This is what I used to run with this team. Like, he's not that kind of player, and that's kind of what hurt them right now. And then you would think that if they like if they were forced to make a roster change, I honestly don't think they will make a roster change. But if they were forced to, you would probably want to replace like probably Taiga, honestly, because they need somebody in the support position to read the game better. Like Insania, as much as good as a player he may be, he just doesn't have the experience. I do think that he's a very valuable captain, so I don't think they can replace him. So I think they need somebody in like the 4 or 5 position, like Taiga, to basically call the shots when it comes to like to make up for Insania's deficiencies. Even though, again, I do think on a very basic level, this team is very talented and they do have what it takes to like go further, but I don't think it's going to be enough necessarily to like poke into that top tier when it comes to like TI.
No, we've been talking about this.
Unless just to finish up on that, unless like you mentioned earlier, they go to like any conceivable
third party LAN.
Like if they could just go to all of them, they start getting that experience. They can make those calls themselves. But that's also difficult in itself because I think a lot of these teams will want to get a lot of play experience there. Like
yeah, like
I think
all Liquid, like a bunch of these teams have to, just because there's not enough. Yeah. There's not enough experimentation within the major cycle.
And I could totally see OG Liquid when they come back. They probably want to play 1 or 2 of those events just to get back to it, because you can't try to get back to it just by playing the major. Like you need a little bit of experience still. Like as much as
you need to get rid of the ring rust.
Yes, exactly.
Like when you were talking about it, I was actually thinking about it. Like I'm thinking about all these different teams. Like, and if you think about it through history, like in general, the top teams are pretty complete. As in, like there's no serious deficiency, and they all have a specific style. So if you want to be like this upset team that can like shoot up to the top in like one hit, but not necessarily be a complete team, you have to be like a master of your style in such a style that nobody's ever seen before. Like MVP did it with the caveman thing. Wings did it with their fucking chaos. Like, but like, in general, like you can't do that. Like Misery did it with DC, kind of. C-Deck did it. Like, it's really fucking hard though to do that style.
It is really fucking hard, and especially it's really fucking hard to actually win as well.
Yeah.
Like you said, C-Deck, Wings, not Wings, DC, that European team, the Greeks.
Yeah, at Finum.
Whatever the names.
They did it once.
At Finum, yeah, they did it once. Yeah, right. Technically DC also only did it once.
Yeah, so does C-Dex.
It is super difficult to actually accomplish something with it, but it is probably the most effective way for these teams to like earn any sort of like short-term achievement. Because it's super difficult to go as one team, but just really stick together as one roster and continuously improve to a point where you become like the best team in the world, or like competitive team in the world, a super competitive team in the world. Like I can't even think of a team that really did it, except for I guess the first Liquid and first OG sort of did it, right? Because
but like both were pretty good off the bat. Like that's the difference.
Exactly, that's the difference. They were good pretty off the bat. Wings, like, I guess, is the only really example.
Like I think I said this. Only like literally only Wings has done that, and then they basically have like 8-month period where they're basically shit.
Yeah, and it's again it's just super difficult to actually like grow as a team that way, and I like those lines, guys, right? I consider I think they're really cool guys, but. And I've hung out with them, and they're really nice guys. But I feel like at some point they will have to realize themselves that this is the hardest path that they've chosen, sticking together with a 5-man roster, trying to make it as a team.
But I mean, we don't even know if they'll stick together. We'll have to see.
We don't know. But like I've talked to some of them, especially Loda, and I think the way they look at it, because if you think about it, the way they first got like big as an organization was with that one roster, right? Like they did technically kick Eternal Envy, but still afterwards they stuck together for like almost 2 years. No, actually they did stick together for 2 years,
basically
2.5 years actually, and then they got even back together because they're like, oh, we're like a family, like alliance, whatever, yada yada yada, and I totally agree with that. But like you could also see that once they got back together, they weren't necessarily good again. Like they got better, but they weren't good either.
Yeah.
So that's just one of those things where I could see them sticking to this roster as long as the players still want to play with one another, and then try to write it out. But if they do that, I'm not sure it's gonna.
I don't really know Loda as a person, but based off of his history, probably part of his philosophy, isn't it?
And that's why again I think if they wanted to make changes, Taiga, Boxy, or probably 2 of the players that I would look towards, both again really talented. Like if they made those changes, I would 100% say somebody needs to pick them up. It's not that because they're bad. It's just because I think they're like the ones holding them back in a lot of ways. And it's really difficult to make the call when they're almost all at the same level, in a sense.
Yeah.
But I guess if you were to stick to a core, I would say Mickey and Senya again are the two ones that you definitely want to stick to.
Right. I think we basically just covered it for the KL Major. I guess pick your
We could make it like a
pick
top
your
three
winner.
or whatever.
Yeah, pick your.
Oh, winner.
I'll just go with LGD.
LGD. Yeah.
Yeah, I think LGD.
I think that even if Secret wins Secret beats them here, I think over 2 matches LGD beats them, and that's the beauty of the double elim. I do think that Secret has today, but I think in the long run LGD will beat them twice. I think it's for Puppy especially. I think he's proven that it's difficult to beat a Chinese team twice in a row and in one tournament as well.
Yeah,
like that's literally why he lost with Navi at TI2 and no, just TI2
yeah,
actually.
TI2. He lost Alliance in TI3, so a bit different. Yeah, basically agree. Like, I still think LGD. Like this is weird to say. I still think LGD man for man is the best team in the world, even though they lost to OG. I just think OG happened to be a better team that.
Oh no, I don't think it's weird to say at all. Anybody actually would agree with you that LGD was the better team that like in general.
Yeah.
But that event, OG just was the better team because they had a much better understanding of the meta.
Yeah, and they had like the one player who's like who literally lives in that area.
Yeah, actually, you could argue that those two players, like Thompson, not getting tilted despite like getting owned multiple occasions. Yeah. That is a feat in itself.
Yeah, Thompson's
honestly that is.
I don't necessarily know if I would have nominated Thompson for like Rookie of the Year because it's literally just one event. Like, does that even count? But like,
that's a funny thing.
Like people go like I've seen some people like go crazy about like what are you talking about? Thompson's the best player in Dota. I was like, what the fuck? He isn't even the best player on his team. But he
probably isn't. No.
But he was fucking legit in the sense like that was literally his first event ever. So
it's literally first event, and he just didn't tilt. He didn't show any signs of like nerves. Yeah. Like how like is it because he's a Finn and he just doesn't have like blood through his veins, but it's like ice or whatever? Like, I legitimately have no idea how he stage. He's just like even like using the chat wheel and stuff like that. You know, he's just like honestly. I think if it hadn't been for the chat wheel, I think we might have seen a different result. Because I think, if you think about it, mentally speaking, it's like a way. It makes complete sense. It's a way of like surrounding or creating an environment that was more reminiscent of like a pub game, more so than a competitive game, right?
Yeah. And it takes a bit of the edge off, doesn't it?
Exactly. And like again, every time, even if you do feel like you're like starting to like feel it, I guess, you just always pull yourself back. Like, oh wait, this is just another game. Like I can just shit talk the shit out of my opponents by like using my chat wheel all the time. Yeah. Like I have the utmost respect for him. Like yeah, sure, Ana as well, but Ana has already like played a TI.
I mean,
he's already won
we
majors.
already have fucking respect for Ana.
We already had respect for Ana in the first place, but Thompson, oh my god! Like I know that was like 3 months ago now, but still, I can't even comprehend the fact that he just
that entire OG run's fucking ridiculous. Like, oh yeah, Ana, you just came back out of nowhere, best player at this tournament. Oh, Thompson, you're a rookie. Oh, Seb, you're actually a fucking coach. Why are you saving? Yeah. Why are you saving them in the 4th game, literally with Axe? Like, what is this? Oh, Tail, you're now a leader and you changed position. Like, what the fuck is this? Oh, Jerax, you continually save them from everything. Like, ridiculous tournament.
The most ridiculous run, but yeah, that's why. And just to bring it back, that's why I think everybody feels like LGD in a way got kind of robbed because again, OG came out of nowhere. Like, LGD, the way the story was written up was supposed to be like the best team in the world. Right, but
hey man,
they probably are,
yeah,
but they didn't get the title.
Hey man, that one was that one was rough, but like, listen, they fucking won every time. Like even if you were an LGD fan, you got to give it up to OG. Like they were fucking masters that day.
Oh, for sure.
They were the fucking masters, right?
Have to respect OG.
Right. So moving on, I guess I think. We basically tailed off because at the very end we're like not even talking about this fucking tournament. We're talking about like, oh man, fucking OG so good. Can't wait to see them come back. But we'll move on to IEM Chicago.
CS:GO portion of the show.
CS:GO portion. So you didn't watch much of it, I imagine, right? Like that's what you basically said.
I watched a couple of maps in the playoffs, especially. I watched a little bit of the group stage, Group A more so than Group B. Actually, no, I watched a little bit of Mouse Sports Liquid, of course. I think we already talked about that last time around, actually.
Yeah.
Or no, I watched
Phase
Phase
Liquid.
MIBR. Phase MIBR I watched
Oh,
as
okay.
well. Was
All
yeah,
right. So here's what I'll do. I'll just like go through them really fast, and
sure.
then you can ask like any specific questions you want. So because you didn't watch that much of it, right? So if there's like a thing you're
I
wondering about,
didn't even watch. I didn't even watch an entire match. I
yeah, right.
watched. I watched maps of several matches. But yeah, sure. Go ahead.
All right. So basically, LDLC made a fucking surprising run here. Like they got knocked out. They got knocked out in the upper bracket by FaZe, and then they beat Renegades best of three, beat North best of three, beat NRG best of three, and then could have could have upset Liquid. But the weird thing was like they basically kept losing their own map pick and winning their opponent's map pick, and like their style of play is super like it's super decisive, as in like they basically have like one or two players like make a play, force a 3v3, and then have Ominic make another play, and then like have Ominic make another play during that period. Or like if they go one side, they're like pause, we just go the other side. Fuck it, like we don't give a fuck if there's like danger over there. Let's do it. And then they go there, it's like oh shit, and they go back or something crazy like that. So this team is like pretty. This team is pretty crazy, but like but there's no like consistency into it. Like basically, I felt like their run was based off of like three different players, like all going off at different times, like Amanek, Devil Duvek, and Alex. So
Do you think they could have had a better shot at like making semis if they had faced another team other than Liquid? Maybe not as Charles, but like, all right. Do you think they would have fared better against Mouse? I guess is the only
yeah,
question I'm
like that's
asking here.
I don't think they would have because I think their style of play is like their style of play is like a bit freeform and a bit like individually based. Basically, is what I'm saying, right? And like
Right.
if you're running that into Mao's, I think like Mao's just a better version. Like
There's a version. They just out
like on the
frag
CT
you.
side, they're a better version of that because they're basically running double ops. They're like, oh, you're gonna run that shit against Oscar and Chris J. Like, okay, bang, bang, bang. Like, what do you want me to say? Right? Like that. Like I think it works against Liquid because Liquid is more likely to run the five rifle setup, and they don't have a like even though both Twist and Nitro played the op, neither of them are truly great at it like Oscar and Chris J are. So that's like the difference. So I think just stylistically, I think they would have been taken out by Mouse, and I think they probably should have been taken out by Liquid, except Liquid didn't get really into it until later on in that series, right? So that's basically what people consider the best French team, which is kind of terrifying if you consider it, like because basically it's basically the reign of terror in France right now for French CS:GO, as far as I can
I
see.
mean,
G2 is basically
there's
dying.
there's no French team to speak of basically,
Yeah,
except for I guess now LDLC again.
LDLC.
Um,
This is like their best run since forever, and
d-
then
is G2's roster change official? Like I saw like
yeah,
a rumor about it,
it's
but is that official?
it's as official as you can get because basically from Nell who's like he's gotten all the French stuff right basically.
Right.
So basically, uh, I think Existence and Smiths are kicked out. Obviously, Smith should have been kicked out. He shouldn't have even been coming back, but he was Shock's best friend or whatever. This is also why you don't. This is also why you never fall in love if you're an esports competitor. Like people joke all the time like girlfriends ruin esports. No, actually like love between teammates actually ruins esports.
No, that actually no, that is 100% true. Like overly attached teammates has ruined a lot of teams.
Yeah, and basically is what happened to G2. As far as I can tell, basically they picked up one young player and then another player from like the Envious Academy, and like apparently he's actually 26. I didn't even look into it, but like that's pretty fucking old. But and then Shox is gonna go back to in-game leading. I'm just like, wait, so you basically like if you just think about it for a second, Shox, Kenny S, Body, and these two players, but Kenny S is playing like shit right now. So basically, what you've done is you reformed G2 from 2 years ago with the Scream lineup, except
With the
without
worst
Scream,
lineup.
without
And
Scream,
yeah,
without RBK. Like you basically made a worse
100% the
lineup.
worst lineup.
Yeah,
Yeah, 100% the worst lineup.
and like I don't really get it. Like basically, like the whole point of bringing Existence back is to give him the fucking keys and make him the tactical in-game leader. But they're like, "I'll get the fuck out." It's like, okay, like what was the point of this? Like basically, basically like once I know for certain like literally everybody's going to fail, I'm probably gonna write an article saying how Shox single-handedly destroyed the entire French scene or something. Like that's what it feels like.
He's like FNS, except he doesn't have a master.
Yeah. Maybe this was actually FNS's master plan.
I mean,
That's...
let's tie it all back to FNS.
FNS,
I mean,
FNS is a god. What do you want me to say? The fucking
I mean,
Pujon.
question is, can he do it to the Danes as well?
No, man, not like you can't fucking touch Astralis, but maybe he can ruin North somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
No, honestly, like the French scene is actually kind of sad, and I'm always like, I think we're like due for another like Carlos tweet. You know, like the G2 CEO is like, oh, this is like fucking embarrassing or disappointing or
Right.
whatever. Sorry to all the fans. Like, we're so close to another one of those because I don't know. That team has been
like literally, I think the only
time, money, and potential.
like
anything.
literally the only thing I think can save the French scene is if like Carlos, like I'm gonna assume for a second that G2 has way more spending power than mentality, right? Just give me a second. If Carlos gets MBK and literally tells him to like fucking Star X this, and what I mean by that is like back in CS 1.6, the best CIS team to come out of that game was Na'Vi, and basically like Na'Vi was very similar to Dota 2 CIS back then. I mean CS:GO CIS CS 1.6 CIS was very similar to Dota 2 CIS before Solo came in. Right. It was like bunch of talent, but spread all over the place with no coherent like in-game leader. Basically, what the Navi CEO did, like the story goes, like he's like, Starix, I'm going to give you a shit ton of money, and you're going to have a livable wage, like a pretty good best salary, but you can only accept this if you put all the bullshit aside and create a fucking super team that makes complete sense. And so he made the fucking super team, and like these are all guys that fucking hate each other apparently. But he made the fucking super team, and then they won like 3 majors in a row, or 4 majors in a row, right? I think that's literally what Carlos has to do with NBK, because I think literally only NBK understands how to make a fucking team at this point in the French scene. Like I don't trust anybody else. Like Existence, he basically didn't let this do anything when Shox took over. Shox we've seen fail multiple times. You look at French CS in general, NBK has gone in right the most amount of times of anybody. I think that's the only way it works. Give MBK the wheel.
I think for me, the way I see it, or the way I look at this team is reminiscent of like Navi with Dindy. Or like with Navi and Gen, like right, they're like holding on.
Yeah.
They're like holding on onto this idea of this like superstar player that they desperately need, but then they like disregard like what a successful team actually needs, right?
Yeah.
And they're like consistently rebuilding around that person, that player, because they're like, no, this is gonna work. Trust me, guys. Like this is gonna work, but it just keeps on failing. And instead of admitting the fact that this is just not gonna work, with this player right now and this organization apparently is not gonna work, they just stick to him. And as much as like they might have had success, or they've had success with Shox in the past, in case with Navi with Dindy as well, like at some point they will just have to admit that they are better off without each other. Probably. At least G2 is likely going to be better off without him. I don't know how much money they get.
But I think before you get rid of Shox, you have to get rid of Kenny S. Kenny S is like,
well, yeah.
Kenny S is playing way worse than Shox. Shox is actually legitimately great right now, but like
for sure. No, for sure. Actually, I mean, you could argue that technically the thought applies to both of them, right?
Yeah, it applies to both of them. But like the only problem is like Dota 2, like CS:GO French scene doesn't have some super awe-inspiring talent yet. Like everybody's talking about Zaiwu, but he hasn't proven shit to me yet on land. So
no, that's definitely true, and that's where you probably will have to like consider, like, do we maybe make an international team? Like I've been advocating this for a long time now, ever since FaZe sort of like started like getting really good. With Kerrigan and like his remix or whatever. Like you need to break it off and make it part and like just explore other options. They are good players out there that need capable leaders, that need like a good organization to take care of them. The question is, it's just like, you know, are they willing to do this?
You know, that's a thought. What if you got Kerrigan into G2?
Dude, I think that would be smartest move ever by them. Like I think Kerrigan has proven to be a leader that can build a team, right? He's worst case they kick him in 2 years again, and then they have a championship.
Yeah, almost championship roster. we did it all by ourselves, guys. Like, you guys completely forgot about that all the years when you completely failed. Like, this keeps happening to Kerrigan for some reason.
Basically.
Yeah.
But no, I legitimately think that this is just something that they need to revisit their idea of like how they want to like go into like CS, and like if Shocks and Kenny S are really the solution to this, and I honestly think they aren't. Certainly Kenny S isn't right now.
Yeah.
I think it's like a problem on two different fronts, because to a degree you as an organization are tied to the player and you have made a commitment to him, and like you still want to like see him get better under your brand, like, because ultimately like organizations like G2, Complexity, a lot of these other organizations, they like treat each other like in a ways like family, right? Like that's really not to be underestimated. Like a lot of these roster decisions aren't necessarily made because they think those are like star players, but they also, or mostly, are made because they also think, well, these are like family members to us. Like we build around them because we've only gotten this far because of them, so we're gonna stick to them as well.
Yeah.
Like Navi, I think for the same with Dendi, as much star power as Dendi has had, I think they realized that they owed him a lot for like what he did for them in the first place.
Yeah, it's
like without Dendi, Navi as an organization doesn't.
Yeah, basically it's like Taz and Virtus Pro. Like the basically interview came out where like the CEO of Virtus Pro was like, yeah, we literally cried on the day we had to kick out Taz. Like, Jesus Christ. Like, yeah. But like I understand that, because basically like Taz not only sold them on the idea of getting the all Virtus Pro team, all Polish team, he fucking delivered. Like, he did deliver. He delivered for like 3 out of the 4 years. It's pretty sick, right?
And that's why I think it is very reasonable for an organization to say, all right, we're gonna, even if we could have immediate success, if say we bought out this roster, for example, like if they could like buy like a fixed roster, right? Even if they could do that, they probably would want to stick to these players because, you know, there's a reason why they picked them up in the first place, and like you said, they've done so much already for the organization. But especially with this G2 roster, I think they really need to realize that, guys, it's been 2 years now, or like, how long has it been?
It's been like a year and a half. Like basically when they made the super team, it's longer if you're just talking about Shocks though.
No, but yeah, it's been like a year and a half. We kind of have to realize that this is not going to work out. Maybe explore other options again, international team, Kerrigan, whatever. Like there are options out there that aren't necessarily French.
Or like you can have French players, but like just get Kerrigan as in-game leader. Like he'll bang anybody.
He's gonna learn French. He's gonna learn French if he has to. I'm sure.
Like there are plenty of French players that can speak English. Like just get him MBK, get him Apex.
Wait, he actually does speak French, doesn't he?
I thought he speaks German. I don't know if he speaks French.
Oh no, he speaks German. Yeah, right. Yeah, you're right. He speaks German.
Yeah,
right.
But like basically, I think Kerrigan would probably be a pretty good choice. But obviously, like that depends on FaZe actually kicking Kerrigan. Because I think right now Nico's kind of deluded himself into thinking Kerrigan will work as a support player or something. I'm not exactly sure. But yeah, I think that's an option. Like, all right, here's a question for you, because like in CS:GO, like when you think about CS:GO and Dota 2, right? Like here's how I've always modeled it. Dota 2 is a game that loves its in-game leaders the most. Of all the esports games I've ever watched, Dota 2 awards its in-game leaders by far the most, and with terms of achievements, success, and respect. Like no other game comes fucking close. And there are like a bunch of reasons why, but that's how I see Dota 2. CS:GO awards its superstar players the most.
Yeah.
All right. But like I've seen a bunch of these superstar players, and I don't actually think they any of them have like the really good mind of what it takes to create a good team, like a good sustainable team over a long period of time. So here's my question: with the fact that like literally like success follows the superstar players in CS:GO more than it follows the in-game leaders, does it make more sense to build around the superstar player, or does it make more sense to build around the leader who creates the system?
I have to wonder about that, because I think the times have changed in that regard. In CS:GO at least, I think for me anyway, it started again with FaZe and Kerrigan. Actually, like Kerrigan, sure, he did have superstar players, but a lot of these superstar players also didn't necessarily work anymore on their old rosters, right?
Yeah.
The Guardian came in. He wasn't actually that great.
He was basically dying before.
He was on the brink of becoming like a really dead opera in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But Kerrigan and like his team made him work again, and suddenly he was like a superstar player again. Olofmeister, I mean, he was still pretty damn good even before that. But I think he
resurrected Olofmeister too.
Exactly, and that's why I think in CS, like, yeah, if you're hot right now, you'll be able to like carry your team onwards. Like I think Simple has shown that easily. But at the same time, you also have to ask yourself, like, like behind a good superstar, isn't there always like a good in-game leader as well? Like Simple this year.
Not in the cases. Well, not in like 2 cases. I'll give you them. Simple, for his entire career, has basically like been this good. Not necessarily this good, but like near this level without an in-game leader. But he's like an exception to the rule. So was Nico. But outside of every other superstar is needed an in-game leader, I guess.
100%. But then you have to ask yourself the question, right?
How many titles did they? Was like he's a weird dude. So.
But then you have to ask yourself the questions: how many titles did they win without a good in-game leader behind them?
Like almost none. But like
basically none. Yeah, right? Basically none. I think CS:GO is getting to a place where in-game leaders are becoming more important. Maybe in the eyes of the community, not so much anymore. Not so much, but I do think that
definitely not in the eyes of the org either, though. That's the problem, right?
Exactly, definitely not in the eyes of the org either. But yeah, that is also changing. That is also changing, though. Like I think Complexity, for example, we as an organization. I think when we picked up Stanislaw, I think we basically made, or even before that with FNS, right? We made a commitment. Like we realized, like if we have a good in-game leader, we can like form anybody to like a god tier player. And like I think going forward, I wouldn't be surprised if we actively built around Stanislaw. I'm actually not sure what the plan is with this team if they ever make changes, but I'm pretty sure they're going to stick to Stanislaw because it makes more sense to like form a superstar and like help others become at least like good fraggers than it is to give a fragger a better idea of how to play the game and like having everybody understand how to play the game. At least that's how I look at it. But yeah, look, you do have a point. There's a lot of people that are focusing on superstars.
Yeah, like here's the thing. Like there are certain exceptions to this rule, and I think 3 of them exist right now. Simple, Nico, Coldzera are like generational talents, as in they only come once in long periods of time. So in those 3 cases, maybe there's a case for it, but like the essential problem is like everybody else in the fucking scene, like basically every other org, as far as I can tell, like outside of Astralis and Liquid, and your team, I guess, because you basically just said it. Like everybody else is siding with the superstar player.
I do think one of those reasons is though because a bad in-game leader, in terms of like an actually like bad player as an in-game leader, doesn't necessarily weigh you down in Dota as much as it does in CS.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like FNS, for example, as great of an in-game leader he may be, in terms of like fragging power, he's actually pretty weak.
Yeah.
Like, right? And that's a big issue. Whereas in Dota, like you need to, like you can't actually win games without a good in-game leader. Like Sumail, if you put him on any other team, he'd probably still be a fucking superstar. He might win games on his own, but at the end of the day, like the big titles are won by like in-game leaders because they ultimately, like Dota is much more of a strategy game than that. Like at the end of the day, Simple can kill 5 people. You may not have planned for it, but he can do it. That doesn't necessarily happen in Dota or like in any other game really. So in that sense, I think there's a reason for why like if you can, like honestly, if we could have Simple, I guarantee you we would build around Simple. Like any team would do that. Like if you get Simple to any organization, they would 100% build around him. And that's the thing. Like if you have like a superstar, it makes sense in CS to like build around him. But I think the safest and more consistent route is always to build around an in-game leader. Unless you're 100% sure you have a superstar.
Here's my problem is like even like the all-time great in-game leaders are kind of getting screwed. Like in this case, we're talking about Kerrigan and FaZe. Fallen in MIBR, because I consider Fallen basically like the greatest of all time in CS:GO for a few different reasons.
They are, and I think one of the big issues is that they just haven't found a good way of like combining their in-game leading skills together with actually also like appearing on the server.
Yeah.
And also I think other players around them have become a lot smarter. Like Coldzera, I mean, he's taking over in-game leading.
He did for a bit, but then like if you saw that, like you didn't see that period, but I saw it. Like basically anytime he was just a second caller, he was banging people out. Anytime he was the main caller, he was not good.
And that's the thing, right? Like calling does distract you from your gameplay, and I think I mentioned it before, right? Like being a bad in-game leader kind of weighs you down. Like being a bad player weighs you down in CS much more than it does in Dota. And I think I think it just is more difficult to call and play well at the same time. And I think you can tell both with MIBR or like SK Gaming and FaZe when they have like a rough patch. It is also usually at the same time that their in-game leader is not performing well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really difficult because I mean it's I guess a question of like the chicken and the egg. Like what came first? Did the team perform not well enough and then the in-game leader also suffered, or did the in-game leader suffer first and then the team as a result got worse? But ultimately, I think they just need to work on their own, like individual performances more so than like necessarily strategies in a lot of ways. I think at a certain levels, the strategies are sound, like for any team. It really just comes down to then like executing those strategies effectively with a team.
Yeah, and like that, and that's like hard to do. So,
and that's why like if you look at Astralis, sorry, just to sort of like wrap it up, like can you tell me anybody in Astralis that's like dropping off, like that's like consistently bad at that team?
No, I can.
No, right?
No, not at all. But I guess we'll talk about a few drop offs in Group A. MIBR basically got banged out by FaZe. Not banged out, but like they lost to FaZe in a close match, and they lost to NRG.
How did that NRG match go? Like I'm curious because like I for sure thought that Tren was an MIBR map. Well, it used to be an SK Gaming map.
It used to be an SK Gaming map, but like it's not an MIBR map. Like,
all right.
Because here's the thing, like SK Gaming was, because the reason you think it's like SK Gaming's map or MIBR's map is because they had that fucking ridiculous streak at the end of their first era with FNX, where they're like they were like 18-0 or something, or maybe like 15-0, and then like Astralis literally broke their back on that map, but like and then that's when they switched, but like they haven't been that good on it since, basically. And as far as I can tell, basically this MIBR team and NRG have hit like walls. Because if you think about MIBR, right? Like I think Yank is a good coach, probably. Like just based off of the fact of like the stories I hear, like this guy's super hardworking. He knows a shit ton about CS. He might be one of the great CS:GO masterminds or whatever. And he's instilled a culture, and like everybody's confirmed he's instilled this culture back. You know, Coldzera and Fallen. And Fallen's back as a player. Coldzera is still Coldzera. Fur is like not as good as he was, but he's not playing the same roles. Stewie and Tarek, we both know are good players, right?
Right.
Basically, if you have that kind of lineup, ignoring the cultural aspects or the team aspects, we're expecting a top 4, top 3 team. This team is not. This team is like borderline top 8 right now. Right?
That's like above, pretty appropriate.
A bit above, a bit below, like you don't really know, but it's around there. And like that's the essential problem is because they've been together for like 4 months, 6 lands. This team's basically hit a wall, and I don't think it's gonna get solved.
I don't think so either. Honestly speaking, like that as much as I want to see this team succeed because cool players that I just want to see like play well, like in those like finals and clutch moments, you want to see Coldzera play, right? Even Stewie TK, I think is a really big stage player, but. I don't know. This team is just, like you said, they hit a wall. They probably just have to change something. Unless if they really want to stick it out, they might maybe make. Honestly, are they going to make Legends again with this roster? I just don't think so. I feel like they're almost worse than the one that got Legends.
Like basically, in order to get Legends, they can no longer rely on the fact that they're great. They have to rely on like the format. Like getting them like the correct path.
That is a very sad way of looking at it, but probably incredibly accurate.
Right. And as for like NRG, I think NRG is actually a better team, and like that showed. But also NRG, like they lost to LDLC, and like this basically continues to happen to them. Like they basically don't they as a team lack some kind of, I don't know if you want to call it psychological aspect, but basically they can't play to their best in big stage matches.
Yeah.
Like that's
also what I think actually also happens to them is I think they aren't actually as good as them, generally speaking.
Yeah.
I think they perform worse against teams that are worse than them.
Yeah, that's about right.
I actually don't want to call our team worse than them, but I think we Complexity do really well against NRG, which I think shouldn't happen because I think NRG, the way they have been playing internationally as well, they should probably be one of the better teams in NA, like, or maybe even like the second best team right after Liquid, right?
They are the second best team after Liquid.
Basically. Well, they are, but like I think sometimes the way they play just makes them look like actually like the third or fourth best team.
Mm-hmm.
Like again, we beat them almost, I think consistently almost, or like we have a pretty good track record against them. Like that's one of those things where maybe it's like a matchup thing, but then I look at them against like certain other teams even, and I think to myself like they shouldn't lose these matches. And
like I don't think they should have lost
really
LDLC. So
yeah, I mean I didn't watch it, but I can only imagine because like sometimes it's just weird. Like sometimes, especially if you look at them individually, it's not even like just one player doing it. It's just like almost as a team, they're consistently, like individually, they're just like, all right, I guess we're not shooting people anymore in this game, or like it's not even that. It's just like sometimes if they're like against, Liquid, MIBR or whatever, and they're in like a clutch situation, I'm like, yeah, Breeze got this. Or like Daps, sure, he closes this out. Cirque, easy. But then against like worse teams, I'm like,
yeah, there's something weird about
that's just really weird. But I guess we'll see. For them, I think it's really important to just get this experience out of the way, going into the major, because it's really unfortunate that they actually didn't make it to the major. Like Rogue probably should have made it to the major. It should have put energy in us. I think the two of us were the best teams at that minor, but Rogue just. I mean, I don't want to say they lucked out, but I think they had a. Well, yeah, Cadian definitely lucked out now. But I actually want to ask you something about that North. But yeah, I think energy should have been there. They missed out on a lot of experience. I think ideally they should have gotten that experience out of the way and then gone to the next major and then be a better team, probably like even a top 8 team or whatever. But now they're going into this major not almost dry, but they probably want a little bit more LAN experience going into that one.
All right. Yeah, so go ahead and ask me about North.
How did they do? I didn't watch the game, but they won the first map against Energy again. Energy probably is the better team, and they once again lost to a worse team. Then they got bodied by Astralis, which is to be expected, I suppose. But how did they what was the LDLC match?
Like basically,
or how did they do in general? Like, what's your impression of North right now?
I give this performance like a C-.
Yeah, all right.
It's like average. Like this is basically, I think they performed a bit below what I expected them. Like here's the thing. I feel I don't actually know what the necessary problems were with MSL. Like I feel like the whole point of going with Cadian is the coach of the team, Ave, is literally going to build this guy into like a mini Ave or whatever. Right, because MSL is already set in his ways as an in-game leader. Like he's already, like what he's done with his career, he's already incredibly successful in its own way. And so, even though Ave is considered like the greatest of all time in-game leader in CS 1.6, like MSL already has his own fucking ideas. They're not going to like change at this point. So maybe he thought, oh, maybe I'll just get this more moldable in-game leader and then go from there. But like if you do that, then like this team isn't going to go anywhere soon for like 6 months, because I feel like that's like 3 months, maybe 4 months. I feel like that's like the growth rate, and then we'll see if it actually works out or not. That's my guess about North. So right now, I'm not particularly excited about them.
When does the minor happen?
I think it happens real soon, because the major's in like February or March or something.
So that's gonna be a rough one to like kind of like sort of like get it on time, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, like we'll have to see, but basically, like I feel like I feel like on paper there's some good players here, but like basically the only guy I consider world class on this team right now is Valde. Like I feel like everybody else feels like a role player right now at this point.
Not a good outlook if Valde is your like standout player. Nothing against Valde, but
like basically you can't like. Here's the thing about CS:GO: you can't win off of one superstar player. Not even like not even simple. Nico could have done it. Like, what do you expect from anybody else, right?
Sure.
So basically, like I feel like Kirby's okay and good at times. Cadian's just Cadian. Like it's like whatever. He's the fucking in-game leader and the opera. Like you can't expect too much from him. Gabe's like an entry fragger, clearly a support player. AZ, decent support. At this point, I feel like he's no longer a bot, and he's pretty decent at times. Pretty decent in general, but he's not going to carry you. So it's like I feel like this team has a pretty clear hard ceiling, and the fact that like fucking MSL somehow got this team to win against Astralis twice is pretty fucking crazy.
So basically, this team right now, as is, only exists to give MSL a little bit of joy.
Yeah.
I pretty much follow North results just by following MSL on Twitter.
Hey, it's great. XD. Right? No, but in all seriousness, we'll have to see, because it's clearly a long-term project. But like, as to whether or not the long-term project works out, I don't know. Like,
that's the thing with CS and even Dota, or like any esport, I guess. You don't really have that much time usually for like those long-term projects. Like in a lot of ways, even if teams like are like generally willing to do that, it's really difficult like to actually like stick to that, because yeah, you can tell, yeah, we're in it for the, but then when you like just lose and lose and lose and lose, like old players might not even want to play together anymore because they're like, nah, that guy's a problem. Oh, this guy, if we only replaced him, we would totally win. It's
Yeah.
so difficult to commit to something anything long term in esports.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Guess we'll go to Group B real quick.
Yeah.
I will say this: if somehow Navi implodes tomorrow, it's all because FNS did it. By knocking them out in that best of one, and then getting knocked out by Big. I will literally construct an entire conspiracy.
Sorry, I remember we did the show after I want to say round one, before, like and we're talking about like a top four at this event, right?
Yeah.
We both had like Astralis, Liquid,
Navi.
Navi, and then a fourth team,
It was
and
like
then
Mouse, right?
wait. I told you Big. And
Yeah.
you're like, are you sure they're gonna face Navi? And I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. I'm gonna go Mouse then. Well, look at that. Look at that.
Still lost Mouse though.
I mean, they still lost him out. They definitely didn't get anywhere near close to top four. But holy hell, what happened in that series? I didn't watch it. What happened in that series? I only actually watched I want to say like last two rounds or whatever.
Like basically, Navi only works when Simple and Electronic both go off. Simple was there, Electronic was not. That's basically how I would sum that up. Like basically, because like the role players on this team aren't that good. Like Edward, Zeus particularly. Actually, Zeus has been doing better recently, but like basically they're not that impactful, right? And then Flamey is basically like he does his job, but he's basically just a role player. And so they depend incredibly highly on both Simple and Electronic showing up. Simple has like a 99% chance of showing up, but Electronic is a bit more variable. He might be like 70 or 80, but you hit that 20-30%, you're gone, right? And like it's different from like Astrology Team Liquid, because if you think about Team Liquid, they have like a Liege, Twist, or Naf can go off. Think about Astralis, like basically everybody can fucking go off. Like FaZe, like they just need Nico +1 to go off. Like this, like Navi is like literally like Simple and Electronic only. Right?
They really are, and it's like this double-edged sword, right? Like obviously it has carried them so far, and could probably carry that. Like it has.
Like they got
almost carried them
ridiculous
to,
fucking
like,
results if you consider like that's their fucking win objective.
No, for sure. But yeah, I guess, and this is kind of what I assumed. Like honestly speaking, like as soon as I saw the results in, like, it's like E United and then Big, I was like, I guess not as Simple and Electronic just didn't show up, and I mean,
It's just Electronic. Yeah. Simple always shows up. It's like a fucking mailman. Never, always fucking on time. Always delivers, right?
That's true. That's true. Has he what's this like? I'm curious. Like, probably this is not the question for you, but what's his like worst rating of the year? Like, he probably
somebody did a stat on this, but basically it was like 1 point. Like I think as far as I know, like his worst rating for an event was as low as somebody else's like some other star player's best rating or some shit.
Disgusting. Like honestly, Simple as
like,
a
I just
disgusting
want to
player.
slap him. Like I know for certain like he's had a few bad games, but like I've tracked it. Like it's literally like close to like 99%. Like his bad games come from like Astralis a few times.
And I don't know. Again, it's super disgusting. Like it is, but I will say though, it is incredibly beautiful to watch.
Yeah.
Like
one of the best shows to watch in the world right now. It's like
the Simple show.
Can Simple carry these people once again? Does it pretty often, right? All right, so I guess talk about Mouse. Mouse is basically as good as you would expect them to be. Like pretty solid team, but they lost to Liquid. They lost to Astralis. No shame in that, but that's exactly where you expect them to be.
I mean, that's kind of their ceiling, isn't it?
Yeah,
like they're definitely below them.
Yeah,
but also they're like probably good enough to be below them, like to be just below them.
Yeah.
You know.
So basically, they played for par here, so that's fine. Yeah. FaZe actually surprisingly beat Astralis in the group A. They won 2-0.
It's honestly, just to get back to that, it's honestly a little bit of a shame that they shared the side of the bracket with Liquid, because that guaranteed that they were going to be lower bracket.
Yeah.
Like if they had made upper bracket and they face, well, actually, I guess they probably would have faced Astralis again then.
Yeah.
But you know, like I'm just saying that I think against FaZe they actually have a pretty good shot.
Yeah.
In comparison to like Liquid Astralis, of course.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, basically like I think FaZe is like I made this thing on I made this comment on Twitter. Is like like we keep calling MAUs like the mini phase because of how they're like constructed, like a bunch of international players create this basic systems, does really fucking well. Like, but like they're a lesser phase. I actually think phase right now with Nico is basically Nico Sports 2.0 from way back in the day when he was on MAUs.
I mean, it kind of is.
Like Nico bangs everybody the fuck out, and then you hope one other guy shows up.
Oh, Nico.
And that's literally the problem with this phase is like basically.
All right. Sorry, but wasn't there this? Oh, am I misremembering? But wasn't there this rumor of him joining SK at some point?
Who, Nico?
Yeah.
No, it
was Simple, right? Simple and Flamey.
Simple and Flamey were potentially joining IBR, right? Yeah. And then Cold Zero actually had the rumor like he was looking around, maybe he would have joined Liquid, maybe he would have joined FaZe or something.
Oh yeah, no, Cold Zero joining FaZe, right? Yeah. That was the thing because him and Nico
want to play together.
Imagine.
That would be fucking crazy, but like I don't think that's the answer to Astralis, sadly.
I don't think that's the answer to anything, but just imagine. Like, look, Navi, you have Simple Electronic, we have Nico and fucking Cold Zero. Let's roll.
That's like literally the battle of the miracles right there, because you get all three of them in one server. Like, it's fucking sick, right?
Pretty much.
But yeah, basically like that.
I mean, they would probably still just play for seconds because the shot should be like, yeah, come at me.
Yeah, but basically this phase is that exact same as like normal. Is like either they roll people over or they get banged the fuck out, and that's what happened to them in the semifinals. Like, oh, we rolled over Liquid first game. Next 2 games get a total of 5 rounds. Congratulations. Like, okay, like either they show up and bang everybody or they don't. Like that's
actually the part I watched. That's literally the Inferno Mirage. Those are the 2 maps that I watched from that series. Mm-hmm. I watched Inferno. I was like, well, this is kind of phase. Like I'm not expecting too much out of this. But it's a good start, right? Yeah. Like we've seen Liquid maybe tilt out of this. Who knows? But then Liquid show up on Mirage. I'm like, yeah, this is over. Like FaZe is not going to win the series anymore.
Yeah.
Like I didn't even have to watch the 3rd map because I just knew Liquid was going to win that.
Like as much as we like legitimately say Liquid has mental issues, FaZe also has FaZe might have even worse mental issues, to be completely honest.
Yeah, and the question is, like, is it really going to be Kerrigan? Like, what's the actual source of it? Like, it's not just Kerrigan.
It's not just
Kerrigan. You mentioned it earlier. Like, Nico does show up, but who else is showing up from the team?
Yeah, like that. Like the central problem is like everybody assumes it's Kerrigan because Kerrigan obviously had that problems in the Astralis, and like that's true to a certain degree. But I saw all your failures. Every single one of you failed at some point. Like,
yeah.
Every single one of you failed at some point, so it's not just one guy here.
We discussed it earlier. Guardian came into this team also as a failure. Like, he was a failure in Navi. Mm-hmm. Who's to say that maybe he's just, like, kind of like weighing the team? Like, I'm not even like pointing fingers. I'm just saying that the finger can't probably be pointed at anybody in that team.
Yeah, like, listen, Guardian actually was my MVP for Boston Major. Hasn't been that good since. He's very similar to Skadoodle in that sense, except, a bit higher, right? Yeah. Nico, yeah, he bangs people the fuck out, but he also created this situation where it's like, well, you don't really have good tactics. People are reading you now. Olaf Meister is pretty sick, but he's just a role player. And like, there's an entire period where like they didn't play with him. Like Rain no longer can do the shit he was doing before. Like, yeah, it's huge problems everywhere.
With Nico, actually, like let's imagine this team breaks up. Let's imagine he goes to the next team. He's yet again like a superstar. But even that team also bombs out and suddenly becomes like everybody's dead aside from Nico in terms of like fragging power. Yeah. Like at what point do you just blame Nico as like actually just like yeah, he brings the numbers and yeah, he was the best player in Mouse and he is probably the best player on FaZe right now and he probably will be the best team on this next team, but like at what point is he the problem with that team then? Like if he continuously is part of teams when he is the star player but then the rest of the team doesn't show up, like at what point do you start considering that he maybe has like some quality where he brings other people down or like whatever?
You want a sick analogy? He's Arteezy.
Give it to me. It could be legitimately. No, that could literally. And that's the thing. Like we are praising him, and like everybody looked at that Mouse Sports squad right back then and laughed at them, rightfully so. Like I mean, Speedy, Jesus Christ. But they did like a big part of it, or like a core part of it, like they did stick together, like Chris J and Oscar, I guess, actually the only ones. They did stick together, and they turn it around, and they are suddenly like a top 4 team in the world or whatever, or like a top 6 team, I guess. You know, you do have to wonder at some point, like, is Nico a problem for any team at that stage? Again, we can't really say right now because we have to face thing plays out.
Yeah.
Because we will only really be able to tell once they do actually make their changes and the results afterwards, how those play out. Like, you do have to wonder, like, is Nico a problem?
Like, here's the difference between Arteezy and Nico. Obviously, like, here's the difference. Arteezy had the options to like switch to other great in-game leaders. He's like, oh, PPD's not working, back to Puppy. Oh, Puppy's not working, back to PPD. Oh, I guess I'll try Crit. Well, Crit wasn't actually that. Crit was okay. Oh, maybe we'll get Fly in. Nico literally only has Kerrigan. Like there's there's no other all-time great in-game leader that's playing international teams.
And sometimes he even feels forced or like feels pressured into like calling himself.
Yeah, he's calling right now. So it's like, what do you
exactly? That's like an issue Arteezy never had to face. I don't think.
Yeah, and like
he's never really had to call.
And like Nico's calling like if you remember the old mouse sports, he's like literally like calling around stuff he wants to do. He's like, I can bang these people out. It's like, yeah, but that's not a tactic. But I can bang these people out. It's like, okay, go ahead and try. Like,
but I do think that those are still very comparable scenarios, though.
Yeah.
Where like Arteezy has been part of like great teams. At what point though do you like look at him as being the problem? Like if teams, like if he's a player of this caliber as we think he is, and obviously if he brings the numbers and like brings the performances, but his teams still fail to win championships, like the biggest ones, like at what point is that person the problem?
Yeah, like that's why I never went into never like believed Arteezy was just happened to be the unluckiest Dota 2 player of all time. He made all those choices, he had all those chances, and he couldn't do it. Right. Same thing is going to happen to Nico if he like continues to fail. Like you literally could have made the choice, because I think Nico and Kerrigan should have been like the core duo you build around for this phase roster. This great international leader that can play a basic style that enables the star players, and the star player and the superstar player of once in a lifetime generation type that bangs people out. That should have been the core duo, but Nico took over, and now basically you're going to always miss that part of your game.
I mean, he effectively chose the other star players over Kerrigan.
Yeah, right. Or like
which I think is a bad move in the long run. Like short term, it might be success.
Yeah,
maybe. I mean, it
like you could do it for one tournament, maybe two, but like long run is not going to work out for you. It's all I'm gonna say.
Actually, the thing is though, I actually don't think you can do it. With you basically tell your in-game leader that you don't have like sufficient trust in him anymore.
Yeah.
Like maybe you can disguise it as like, oh no, it's an experiment. You know, take the pressure off. Like you get a fresh perspective. No, it just tells you we don't trust you to carry or to like steer this ship anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you really can't do that to an in-game leader. Like maybe there is one in-game leader who doesn't care or whatever, but I generally think you can't do that to an in-game leader.
Like if you look at the Fallen example, like basically when Cold Zera took Fallen's like fucking leadership, like I feel like I literally killed his confidence.
I mean, yeah, where's Fallen?
Like, you see that fucking tweet where like Fallen's like, oh my god, Astralis is so fucking good. Who the fucking stopped them? I'm like, do you remember yourself from like an year ago? Where, like you went to their fucking country. You're like, I'm gonna turn this place into a fucking graveyard. Like, what the fuck? What happened? Library. Like, what happened? Yeah. Right? It's like, oh,
he used to be the librarian, and now he's like he's being shushed.
Yeah, it's like
in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's like, Jesus Christ, like I know like Fallen's in like a tough spot. Like he literally does have everything you need to like at least challenge Astralis. Like not in terms of players, but in terms of like him and his personal skill set. Like if he got the right players, I think he could eventually do it. But like basically, like I think Cold Zera might have killed his confidence. I know Nico's basically killing Kerrigan's confidence. Like, and
that's why in Dota, I've always thought that like there's a lot of players that do have like big egos, and that's why they need like big leaders on top of them to like shut them up. Remember Pycat? What I told you about Pycat? I always thought that Pycat needs a leader that has a much more bigger presence and authority than Pycat could ever try to exude or take over. Because like if you have like a weak leader, I'm not even calling them weak, but if you have like a leader that is being taken over, like no matter the circumstances, that means the leader failed and you don't have a lead anymore, because you can't just suddenly switch leaders.
Yeah.
That just doesn't work like that, because you can't just have two alpha males in like a pack of wolf. Like somebody is going to be upset or somebody's not going to be happy, and especially when it comes to like these kind of performances. In CS, I think it's been pretty established that in-game leaders generally for the most part, and I think it is still very true for pretty much 99% of the teams, in-game leaders perform generally worse than the others because they are focused on a lot of other things, and they aren't star players. Like, right, one of the things that sets them apart is the fact that they can make those calls, that they can be a strategist, whatever. And that's why usually in-game leaders are the bottom of the scoreboard of their own team. Like, if you strip them of the in-game leading part, you're basically just forcing them to be another player.
Yeah.
And then you might as well just not have them as another player, because again, they aren't necessarily the most skilled ones.
Yeah, so it's like, yeah, basically agree with that. Like, here's the thing. Like, we didn't talk about it, but I'll go ahead and say it. Pycot's probably not going to come back unless another like all-time great leader takes him.
And I legitimately think that this needs to happen to players like Nico, Coldzera. Like, they probably need a captain again, I think, who they have the utmost respect for, like where they wouldn't even question or wouldn't even dare to imagine taking over leadership roles. I think the only way they repair these relationships is if they aren't the ones that chose this. Like, let's say FaZe, right? What if let's imagine, like, what if the three other players forced Nico to become to become the new in-game leader? We're like, no, we don't trust you anymore, Kerrigan. But hey, Nico, you could do it. And Nico reluctantly accepted that. I think that's the only way where Nico repairs his like relationship in that end with Kerrigan, because like otherwise, like I just don't see a world where these two become a champion. Like they don't become a champion.
These two aren't going to work together. Like I know they're technically playing with each other, but like going long term, I think they're going to split apart. And I think And I keep saying this, but it's going to be Kerrigan's revenge tour part 2. Where like he got kicked out of Charlotte, he like went out of his way to kick Astralis' ass. He's gonna do the same thing with FaZe, and it's gonna be way easier against FaZe and Astralis. I'll tell you that. And
for Coldzera and Fallen, I think it can lead down the same path or a similar path. But I think for them, it's maybe a little bit more room for redemption in that regard because they have been long-term friends, and I think there's a lot of room for, hey, I should have never doubted you. You're my in-game leader. Let's beat the shit out of Astralis. I think they need a little bit of humble cake.
Yeah. Like we'll have to see how that one goes. But like,
I mean, I say that as if like Fallen is actually like he was at some point definitely the best leader in the world.
Yeah.
There's the odds of him actually becoming a lot worse, and maybe it's the right decision for them not to have him as the lead anymore. But if they want to continue with him as a player, I don't think they can just have him as a player anymore. I think they need him as a leader at some point, because
Fallen is a leader again, right? So
I mean, yeah, but he's not really pulling his weight right now. As a player,
as a player, he's okay actually, but it's like, here's the thing: he's not a superstar player, and that's what he was when he was like 2016, right?
Yeah,
like it's a bit different. Like,
I feel like though, that's the thing though. In the opposition, I think there are so many superstar players that you could pick up somebody else, right? I just think that technically speaking, there would be other options to pick up if they decided not to continue with him as an in-game leader long term.
You mean Fallen, right? Like the problem with that is like they'd probably like. When I look at this, like the MIBR and the FaZe thing are a bit different, because MIBR is basically Brazilian players and NBA players. Like,
no, that's true. Like that's very true.
Their function is a bit different from the FaZe function. Like
they would probably never get rid of Fallen ever.
Yeah, like because when you think about because the whole point of like I don't necessarily know if they can delineate it, but if I look at that SK team, I think to myself, what made them truly great wasn't the fact that like Coldzera was like a fucking great player, or Fallen was a superstar player at one point, and then it was Fur. Like it wasn't those. It was the fact that their team play and their like clutch factor and like 3v3s was fucking off the charts. And then they kicked out Taco, and then it never came back. Right?
Where's the clutch?
But like, but to be fair, like it was pretty bad with Taco to begin with.
No, it was like one of the reasons why they kicked him, right?
Yeah, but then like, but it never returned. Basically, it's like the essential problem.
Oh, that's a really good point, and that it is, I mean,
Like,
obviously, as I mentioned, like they're never gonna kick Fall.
yeah,
Was like right, they're never gonna kick him,
you
and
you made a team called NYBR. You can't kick him.
yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, but yeah, basically that's. I guess that's a good enough tangent for the in-game leader thing because like it's such a weird, it's like such a different subject in CS:GO than it is in Dota.
it is really different, especially because in Dota, like again, I don't want to start another tangent, so I'll just keep it short. Like in Dota, it's just like Dota players just need a completely different terms of like skill set than in CS.
Yeah.
The same actually with League of Legends as well.
I will say this. I will say this about Dota. In general, the great in-game leaders in Dota have like a supersized ego, except for Kuroki maybe, but like the others definitely have like supersized egos.
Yeah,
Like,
but that's
that's not the case in CS:GO.
I think that's though because like you said, like like in-game leaders in Dota are treated more often than not like
With way more
actual
respect.
with way more respect, because like part of it is also because like drafting is already a thing in Dota than it is in CS. Like
Yeah.
like the game begins before the first creep is hit, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing. And in CS, like drafting is like almost whatever to a lot of like. I'm not saying it's whatever, but it is nowhere near as important as it is in Dota.
It's not as complicated, nor it's not as complicated,
And
right? That's
yeah,
different.
it's definitely not as complicated.
Like,
It is.
I'll,
It is
I'll
still
go ahead
very
and say
important.
this: plenty of in-game leaders fuck it up. Shout outs to Zeus, but like literally, this guy picks his worst map into every team, and he wonders why he's losing. It's like I'm gonna pick Inferno. Inferno is your sixth lowest map win rate. Doesn't matter. Loses. I wonder why we lost. Electronica, it was your fault. I was like, God damn it, Zeus. God damn it.
Exist does the same thing.
Yeah, Exist does the same thing. So like, to be fair, in-game leaders still fuck that up. Even but it is what it is because like their data is like completely different from our data. So like in their minds, they think they're doing correctly. As to whether or not who's correct is who knows, right? But I guess we'll move on. The surprise team of this tournament is actually Fnatic. And I'll go ahead and say it. Fnatic is back. Like
You think this is enough for you to?
here's my reasoning, right? Because we already know Crims is fucking amazing, right? Like no caveats need to be made. He's probably top 5 player of this year for sure, for certain. I think. Flusha was trash. That's true. Like Exist, I actually still don't rate as a particularly great in-game leader, but he like does his job well enough, and like he plays a loose system. But basically, what basically has happened is like they got Twist, and Twist is he actually has a pretty high skill ceiling. Like my biggest problem with him was always his like mentality. Like he doesn't seem to have particularly high ambitions. But like basically, the thing about Twist is like he's very versatile. As in, he can play a bunch of different spots, a bunch of different roles with both weapons, like a rifle and op. And if you have a guy like that, basically that means anytime JW wants to go off and do something crazy, Twist is just there to fill a hole, and like it's not really a hole because basically Twist is as good as JW, except a different style. And so basically, like if you think about the old Fnatic when JW was good, he was allowed to go off and do crazy shit all the time. And
Yeah.
and like the only reason that worked is because like the rest of the team was good. Well, with Twist, Crims, and then Brolan actually does his job pretty well. JW is allowed to go fucking crazy all the time. And then you combine that with like their speed, like they're basically playing a very high fast tempo pace, and they're also like they're also using like typical the old Fnatic style of like putting a bunch of pressure across the map, and then you basically have like Crims, Twist, JW all doing this, and then Brolan can do it sometimes too. And then Brolan himself I actually think he does have a lot of freedom in this lineup where like if he wants to go fucking crazy he can, but he usually doesn't. So like basically it has like, and then the raw team play seems pretty good to me. So like basically even with the assumption that JW is going to go down in performance, I feel like it should be already better than the previous Fnatic lineup, and their style is pretty good. So I feel like, and also the fact that I feel like a bunch of other teams are falling down, and they did beat Liquid. They almost beat Astralis. They probably should have beat Astralis in the way that they all showed up. Like they all showed up individually against Astralis in general. Like,
I think you brought up a really good point that I think is really important actually to note, which I think oftentimes gets overlooked when teams make it to the top or like regain strength or like just generally like poke into like a tier, is that other teams at the same time also just falling off. Like these things oftentimes need to fall in place at the same time. Like this event, for example, if Navi perform or like if Navi like is at full strength, right? Fnatic probably doesn't make playoffs, or maybe they beat Mouse Sports in the lower bracket or whatever. We don't really know because they never actually played, so we can't really tell. But yeah, if Navi show up, Fnatic maybe makes it into the playoffs, but then they face Astralis immediately afterwards. They probably lose again. They maybe have a good showing, but it's just one best of 3, and you're like, is it really the team? You know, we can't really tell. But now Big didn't show up. Navi obviously wasn't there, and then suddenly they get to play Liquid. And then Liquid and against both Liquid and Astralis, they show like a really good performance. And then suddenly you're like, well, Fnatic is actually a good team. And then going forward, like Big still, I think is a team that ever since the major, I would say has not necessarily been getting better. If anything, almost getting worse. Same with FaZe. Obviously, FaZe is getting worse. MIBR isn't getting better. Definitely getting better.
So for Fnatic, it's all consistent.
Exactly. For Fnatic, it's almost like there's a spot in the top 6 or top 5, like right open for them. Maybe even top 4. Who knows? Like going forward into the next major, who really knows? So it's like you said, like I don't want to take anything away from Fnatic, but they chose a really good or they found a really good timing to like poke into this right now.
So I think they're basically on the rise. But we'll have to see. I feel like you give, particularly Liquid and Astralis. These are teams that will study them and will counter them. Navi probably won't, but then Navi also have Simple, so I don't think it matters as much. So I guess the real question for Fnatic, if they want to break through, is if they can beat Mouse head-to-head. And I don't know. Like, that's probably 50-50 for me right now. Because I'll go, like, even though like I sound super high on them, like, beyond Crims, I don't necessarily know how consistent the like other guys are.
Yeah, and I mean that's like a fair assessment of them either, right? Like this is just one tournament performance. For all we know, like next tournament they're gonna fall off again. Like, it's really difficult to call that because teams can overperform at events. And I mean, teams have definitely overperformed before. So yeah, I think for now it's just really interesting to see, and I think it would be. I personally would love to see Fnatic back on the top again because I think Crims and JW in top form and like on the top team make for very entertaining CS. Generally speaking.
And there's always actually. With the way this actually maybe we'll see, but like the way this team works, maybe you bring back Olaf Meister for like Twist or something.
That'd be dope. Like FaZe is on the verge of falling apart, so there are scraps to be picked up, and I think it'd be really cool. But it's just one of those things where you have to wonder like, would picking Olaf Meister up making them actually worse again?
He probably would.
Like as good as a player he may be, like there are certain dynamics that you just don't want to mess with. And
you know what I'd do though? I'd probably put Olaf Meister on NIP, and then have Crimson, and then I just write about like all Crimson and Olaf Meister are fated to fucking kill each other now that they're the best Swedes, obviously. Like
twins that are like separated at birth and then they just find each other, but like they suddenly realize they're like actually fated enemies. I would love that, dude. I would love that.
Basically, I wrote something similar. It was like basically like they became each other once they split apart. Like Crim's like, oh, now I'm the superstar player. Olaf's like, oh, now I'm the support player. It's like, what the fuck is this? How does this work out? But it did. So, all right. Here's the best. I saved the best for last because Astralis like. This is simultaneously a great and bad tournament for Astralis. Because you didn't watch a bunch of the games, but I did. This is, like, you asked me earlier if any of the Astralis players were dropping off. I'd say 4 out of the 5 players of Astralis all dropped off in this tournament.
Ooh.
Device, Dupree, Glaive, and Magus all had bad games throughout the entire tournament. Only Zitnix was like God low. It was like God mode, but like he's like a support player, right? And despite that, they won. Right? So you had a bad tournament, but you still fucking won. Right?
The question is now though, like, it's like you said though that it wasn't a bad tournament for them.
Yeah, and they still won.
Oh right, no. The way I thought about it was bad for them. Like play it in a way, like you know, like
No, like I mean, like they individually didn't show up. except for
right, and they still
Zenix.
won. Well, that's scary then. Like considering like they
Like this
considering like the finals was like 3-0 as well.
like this tournament is literally like a C
I
from
mean,
them.
they did lose to Charlotte. They did lose to FaZe in
Yeah.
the
Like they
groups.
barely showed
So.
up they barely showed up against FaZe, and then they were almost they were basically dead against Fnatic.
That's scary.
Like
But that's hope for other teams. Like as much as I enjoy watching like a team like own an era, it's like I think one of the greater parts of that almost is like them
falling
getting
down.
like them falling down and like not necessarily falling down on their own, but like rather some team is just rising to the occasion, beating them, right?
Yeah, because basically, if you didn't watch it, but basically, like, if you're going to watch a series, watch game 1 and game 3. Because basically, game 1, like, Astralis gets on T side and like, oh wow, it's just gonna be a typical day at the office. Astralis goes like 12-3 on the T side, and then they start losing over and over and over again. And Astralis basically has to pull out some heroics to barely win 16-14. And I think in terms of as a team and tactically, Fnatic actually were better. It's just Astralis did like some superhero shit to barely edge it out. And Fnatic were definitely better on Mirage. This should have actually been, this could have been a 2-0. Then it could have been a 2-1 for Fnatic going into Inferno. Because basically, you don't watch this either. But basically, I was on like the Astralis got banged out on their CT side, but like that's kind of what happens when like if you control the economy, that steamroll can kind of happen. But on the T side, basically like Fnatic were basically like shutting them down, and then Astralis had like close to zero money, and then they did a force buy, right? And it was like a 14th round, 14-9, and then they got to the B site. They did like a B wrap, right? And they planted it down. It was like a 2v1, but their two players were like smoked out, and then GW just like defused it. And then it was like a 15-9. So it was like a backbreaker moment. And even then, Astralis went all the way back, just pulling heroic after heroic after heroic. Like in the 29th round, like basically like Zitnix won a 1v1 by not peeking. Like basically like Broland's like I'm going to like fake the defuse. I have a defuse kit. And like usually you peek out in the 5 seconds. Zitnix like you're not gonna fucking do it for real. Didn't do it for real. Fucking won. Like Jesus Christ, Zitnix. Like Zitnix is basically winning a shit ton of these, and that happened. And then like in the final round, like they basically called like the perfect execute. Like they lost device early, and they're like fuck it, we'll just do our perfect execute on a B site. Molly's rained down. They clean everything up, and they force overtime, and then they win. Like that's like basically. Astralis pulled a Fnatic on Fnatic. If you think about it. Astralis pulled a Fnatic from like when Fnatic were the greatest of all time team. They pulled that Fnatic on this Fnatic.
It's now you gotta again, it ultimately just boils down to like who's gonna beat them. Like when you look at these kind of performances and the way you like described it, like who can actually take them down, if not for them not showing up, like right?
Yeah.
Like are they really their own big worst enemies, or is it actually somebody that's able to like rise to the occasion? Because right now, you would want to say almost like Liquid is the only team that can rise to the occasion because they are the most well-rounded team outside of Astralis.
Mm-hmm. But they get banged out from Liquid.
They get banged out, like they get like destroyed almost, like on in the finals. Like, how much more do they need to shape up and like? I don't know. It seems super weird. Like I just don't see like any team right now. It seems still so far away, and you'd almost like inclined to say that it's just another major for Astralis. Like, hey, congrats, 2 months. Like, what is it? Like 3 months from now? I think
yeah,
the major.
3 months from now.
Like, I don't know. That's not a lot of time, honestly, considering there's like a bit of a break as well.
Yeah. So like the only question we have to ask ourselves is if this Astralis shows up again. Like what I mean by that is like if you compare this to like this is the only tournament where Astralis didn't play well.
Yeah.
Like they've had tournaments where they've played slower, but they played way better than this. So the question is if this is now their consistent level, then they're going to drop off. But if this is just like a bleep on the radar, then they're going to continue dominating. Like that's like the next question for them. And apparently their actual prep wasn't that good for this tournament. So, and it's not something they generally lie about. So we'll have to see in the next tournament. I think it's like ECS for them. So.
Yeah, I think ECS next week in Atlanta, which is a bit rough because Complexity was supposed to be there. Except we decided to not win. Like, we literally just needed one more map win against Renegades, E United, Space Station. Like, any map win would have been enough.
Well, you couldn't have beaten E United. It's like fucking FNS, the mastermind. But
actually, I'm not sure if it was E United or Rogue right now. Now that you mention it, I'm not. Did we play FNS already this season?
Who knows? Only FNS.
Maybe, but yeah, it's only FNS and know. He decides all these things. No, it was actually United. Yeah, we literally won these teams that we should have never in pro going into the major. We actually had a really good track record online, right?
Mm-hmm.
And especially against these kind of teams, we would have 100% 2-0 Space Station, E United, whatever. But for some reason, ever since the major, we've just been online, especially, which is whatever. So hopefully next week Atlanta, DreamHack Atlanta. It's the tier 2 lands I could think of.
Yeah, those
I think
those are pretty good lands, actually. Just for lower tier teams, you know.
These are incredibly important in terms of practice for everybody here.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a shame that there's 5 NA teams because ultimately they're going to end up playing each other again, which isn't actually that much practice if you think about it. So it would have been really good if there had been 1 or 2 more European teams. But it's already good that you have 2 European teams, French and the Fraxers, the Danes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think about it covers it. There's no point. We've actually already seen the rerun of the grand finals multiple times.
You know, it's hilarious that we said going into this. We said, this is going to be a quick one. We almost wrapped 2 hours in, I think.
Yeah, we probably went on way too many tangents, but that happens. That happens.
This is what this show is about. Going on tangents about anything esports related.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about. All right, so I think that about does it. You already know the shout outs. Cole.
Same.
Watch our things. All right. See you guys later.